Ed Rossdaler was the rebellious son of a noble family with a high social standing. He sat idly on his bed, lost in thought, reflecting on the storyline of his life, having ruled the academy like a prince. He looked at the information in front of him and said, "So, what you're telling me is they've erased me from the family tree, right? You were expelled for making disrespectful comments in front of the Honorable Princess Phonia. You also illegally interfered with the entrance exam for Holy Sylvania Academy. Your behavior showed blatant disregard for protocol and tarnished the family name. You were blinded by envy, and these are crimes that cannot be ignored." He gave a bitter, self-deprecating smile, feeling as if fate itself was mocking him. Ed Rossdaler, your life. Ed was kicked out of his house with nothing but his luggage. That's everything you have now. Thanks for your efforts up to this point. It's over. At Sylvania Academy, students were whispering about Ed. "Hey, isn't that Ed Rossdaler?" "Shuh. Don't look, he'll notice now." Why bother keeping quiet around him? Looks like his family disowned him, so he's probably cleaning out his dorm room. So, we won't see him next semester, right? He shouldn't have cheated on the entrance exam in the first place. That filthy noble. I knew this would happen. Hearing the gossip, Ed covered his face and silently tried to explain himself. To be honest, it really wasn't fair, because the arrogant person everyone's talking about, that's not me. It turns out he had somehow ended up inside a game set in the Sylvania Magic Academy, a game he loved the most, Asteris, the failed swordsman of Sylvania Asteris. Usually in these kinds of stories, when someone gets transported into a game, they either become the eldest son of a rich family, the troublesome heir of a genius clan, or a level SS hunter breaking all the rules. But out of all the possibilities, he ended up in the shoes of a third-rate villain, kicked out of the dormitory right at the start of the game. He was stuck in the worst character at the worst possible time. Ed stood up, tilted his head back, and shouted to the sky, "This isn't fair. Don't tell me this is real. I have always lived a simple and frugal life. I've never been greedy." The students protested, "Look at him. After doing all those things, he says it's unfair. He says he needs to be frugal and simple. That jerk has no shame." Hearing those words, Ed could only bow his head and stay silent. But his bad luck didn't stop there. When he checked his status window, he finally understood why Ed was considered the worst. Gender: male, stamina 3, intelligence 4, age 17, talent 7, willpower 7, race human, luck 6, achievements none. He was shocked. Are these stats for real? Even the NPC farmers have a stamina of 5. He's studying magic, but his intelligence is way too low, and his stamina is almost nothing, even if he is a noble. No wonder he started off as a third-rate villain, showing up only in the early scenes. Even in his own memory, he could barely recall him. He didn't even have any memories of what happened to him later on. Suddenly, an image popped into Ed's head. I remember now. In the corner of the endgame credits, he was begging for money, looking like a useless bum. Guess that makes sense. That good-for-nothing had no clue about the world and was suddenly thrown out onto the streets. Ed sighed, feeling disheartened. So he ended up as a beggar. Honestly, it's a miracle he's even alive. Ed silently thought to himself, why me? Why did I end up in this body? I don't know why, and there's no way for me to figure it out. But I won't let this be the way it ends for me. No matter what, I'll survive. With that strong resolve in mind, Ed grabbed his luggage and set out. This place wasn't like a regular school. It felt more like a city, with the entire Arkan mountain range within its boundaries. He was in the northeast section of the academy, an area where the forest still looked untouched. Ed had been walking for a long time. After such a long journey, he'd finally managed to escape the prying eyes of the other students and had ended up walking for half the day. That was enough time for him to get a clearer sense of his situation. At that moment, he had just been cut off from his family. That was the brutal beginning of his new reality. I still feel like there's a little hope left for this life. Maybe, even though I've been cut off from his family, he hasn't been expelled from school yet. This is important because, based on what I know, Sylvania Academy is a top-tier institution. As long as you graduate from there, your future is pretty much secure. And as long as the game still takes place at the academy, I can use all the information I've gathered from playing through 5 times to my advantage. In the end, Ed concluded, so, that means all I need to do is graduate quietly, and I can live a much more comfortable and better life than the one I left behind in the old world. So of course my goal is to graduate. The big issue here is the sky-high tuition fees. The fees for this semester are probably already paid, so I just need to find a scholarship for next semester. Looking back at 8 stats, I felt discouraged. With his stats, is there any way I could get a scholarship? I don't think so, and I'd be lucky just to manage that. I can figure out how to pay tuition later. But for now, I need to focus on the more urgent problem, the things I need to survive. In other words, food, clothes, and shelter. I'm already thinking about how to avoid becoming a homeless street thug by next week. Ed opened his luggage. Inside, there were brightly colored clothes without any tags, a ceremonial dagger that also had no tag, and a decorative cup with no tag. I have enough clothes already, but what about food and a place to stay? Ed sat down, resting his chin on his hand and thinking. The problem is, I don't have anywhere to stay or any food for tonight. Based on this guy's reputation, it's going to be tough to find a job. I can't go back to the dorm either since I just got kicked out. Looks like I'm stuck here in this forest for now. He glanced at the cool stream nearby and thought, at least I'm lucky to have water here. There are still 10 days until school starts. I guess I'll have to make sure I'm qualified to be a student by then. Ed stood up, filled with determination. Windblade, Windblade. He kept casting the spell to gather wood. At least he could use magic. Ed was exhausted, sweat pouring down his face, but he found it oddly interesting. I've only chopped down 15 trees and I'm already this wiped out. Damn it, this is just making me hungrier. It's not very useful. Ed grumbled, before kicking me out, at least you could have fed me. Do you get hungry when you use magic? I'm starving, like really starving. He glanced at the pile of firewood and suddenly remembered something his grandfather had said. I remember him telling me about this when I was a kid. He said when he was young, there was a drought and he had to eat tree bark from the mountains. Thinking about it, Ed muttered the fire spell. Ignition, ignition. As long as I can eat, that's all that matters. Once the fire was going, he looked at the piece of wood. Ha! If you don't look too closely, this kind of looks like chicken breast. With that, Ed dug in and ate it hungrily. 3 days later, the vomiting started. His face grew pale and gaunt, looking completely drained of energy. Ed grumbled, Grandpa, I really hate you right now. After a day of hunger and 2 days of throwing up nonstop, Ed concluded, wood is meant to be used for building houses, not eating. He set to work on building stakes. First, he needed to make a frame to hold the wood in place. He carried a bunch of wood, but it ended up falling on top of him. I only have 2 hands, but I've got 4 posts to deal with. This is harder than it looks. Using all this strength, he hammered in the stakes, tied the wood together, and finally managed to finish the frame. Ed was exhausted. There's still a long way to go. He thought, anyway, I can't just sleep on the bare ground. He took out some clothes and laid them down to sleep. This feels like a waste, but I don't really have any other options. After several days, his tent was finally finished. He sat down to admire the result of all this hard work. Oh, it actually looks pretty impressive. It was tough, but I managed to finish it. Suddenly, a notification appeared. You've completed your creation. Your craftsmanship has improved. Creation complete, basic wooden tent. It's a place where you can rest for a short while. Inside, it's still rough and worn down. If not maintained regularly, it will soon become useless. Difficulty 0.5 stars. Skill details, apprentice crafter. No specialties. Handiwork LV4, design LV1, foraging LV1. Ed looked up, his eyes heavy with dark circles. He felt somewhat comforted. So the crafting system has been unlocked, huh? Ed lived a life of nobility, so he probably wasn't familiar with this. But looking at the stats, he thought, even so, my handiwork level is only at 4. Ed realized that his talent lay in his hands, even more so than in magic. And right now, he needed that skill. Using his dexterity, Ed completed his first creation, a simple harpoon. A ritual dagger attached to a branch with a sharpened edge. It could be used for hunting or fishing, though it lacked sharpness. Still, the spear was finished and carried a sense of pride. Ed thought to himself, asterisk time to go find some real food. It's been 2 days with an empty stomach, and I've worked myself to the bone. I'm pretty sure I can't move much more, but maybe my recklessness will still let me act. Asterisk. Forgetting his exhaustion, Ed rushed to the stream to catch fish. Asterisk, I want meat. Asterisk, he said as he dove into the water. His efforts paid off as he caught some fish. Excited, he quickly cast a spell. Asterisk ignition, ignition. Asterisk, the fish, fresh and delicious, sizzled and smoked as they cooked. Ed quickly devoured them, savoring each bite. There was still a week until school started. He just had to hang in there. If he could make it until then, he was confident he could get through school without any major issues. Ed was about to eat some fish when a voice suddenly echoed, You, Ed, you're still here? Ed had been so caught up in surviving that he'd forgotten something important about the main characters. But out of all the people, he never expected to run into her here. It was the same tone, the same expression, the same sharp look in her eyes. You don't seem to feel any remorse. Please to just leave this academy. It was the beautiful girl with long blonde hair, Princess Phonia, the one who had kicked Ed out of the dorm. Ed was a villain who had appeared right at the beginning of the game. Using his family's influence, he made trouble for the main character's childhood friends, got beaten up by others, and ultimately met his downfall. But that wasn't the end. With a heart full of hatred and a cunning smile like that of a venomous snake, Ede had maliciously altered the entrance exam results for the Sylvania Academy, only to get caught in the act. While he was secretly tampering with the results, the door suddenly opened. He was discovered by a girl who had come to take the entrance exam. Phonia Elias Kloll, the third princess of the Kloll Empire, with a look of fury in her eyes, Princess Phonia. She activated her insight and uncovered the lies and schemes of her target. Ed, caught in a pitiful situation, gritted his teeth and tried to defend himself. His face showed panic and sweat poured down in fear. But everything was exposed under Phonia's sharp perception. The truth came out, and Ed was thrown out with his luggage, then kicked out of the dormitory. Everyone at the academy probably hated him. While sitting and reflecting on the past misdeeds of this body, a voice filled with hatred suddenly spoke up. The girl in the white dress with long hair and rosy cheeks crossed her arms and asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" He had just run into the one person he definitely shouldn't have met. Phonia pressed on. "You're telling me the academy didn't expel you?" She crossed her arms, leaned forward, and shot him a harsh glare. He flinched, backing away in fear, stammering, "Well, I was still a student here. I was just kicked out of the dorm, not expelled from the academy." Phonia's expression slowly darkened, and she scoffed, saying coldly, "I'll make this brief." Then she shouted angrily, "Get out. I can't stand having someone as shameless as you around this school. I'm going to talk to the principal and demand they expel you from here." She continued shouting loudly, accusing him of disgraceful actions toward one of the academy's students. She claimed he had deliberately harmed a student, sabotaging her future. As she spoke, his mind kept drifting to the fish roasting down below. "It's burning. After 3 days of hunger, my precious food, and now this." His face slowly grew more frustrated as he realized his fish was about to be ruined, but she kept on ranting. "I thought you were just going to say a few words, but no matter what, it's clear we're both done for now." The Princess of Phonia, her face full of anger, kept shouting at him, spewing hate and resentment. She truly had the power to have him expelled, and if that happened, he'd lose his cool for sure. His gloomy face slowly moved toward her, and he spoke. "The sun will set soon. Isn't the royal family always surrounded by guards?" He flashed a mysterious smile, his eyes flashing with anger. His face betrayed his emotions as he looked at her and added, "I never thought I'd see a princess alone in the woods like this." Phonia wasn't afraid at all. She suddenly unleashed her power and took a fighting stance. "Do you think you can threaten me just because I don't have my guards with me? If so, you're mistaken." After hearing Phonia's words, Ed responded with a question. "What do you mean by threatening me?" "It's nothing," Phonia replied. He kneeled on one knee, placing his right hand on his chest and his left hand on the ground, then smiled confidently as if thanking the princess. However, her clairvoyance had been activated. She was both surprised and suspicious of his words, so she used her ability to look deeper. Asterisk, he said thank you? Asterisk. The truth was, there was no deception in Ed's words. Phonia was stunned, her eyes wide open as she stared at him, unable to believe what she was seeing. "What?" she asked, clearly shocked. He lifted his gaze to be hers. Deep in his subconscious, he thought about the Ed family he belonged to. This family was well known and powerful, but they had exploited the people and carried out inhumane experiments on humans for a long time. It made him think of someone powerful standing in front of a blood-red castle in a dark, gloomy place. It was where these brutal experiments took place, with piles of corpses buried deep underground. For the main character, that family was nothing but trash, and their fate would certainly be destroyed. The grim and eerie scene unfolded before Meade, with the guillotine standing tall like a symbol of merciless punishment. Its blade was still gleaming, reflecting the fiery red light of the sky like flames from hell itself. Beneath it, a head lay quietly in a pool of blood, its lifeless face showing the marks of its final horror against the backdrop of a blood-red sky. Dark flocks of crows flew overhead, creating an unsettling atmosphere as if they were signaling that a great crime had been committed and justice was about to be served. The air was thick with a deadly silence, broken only by the sound of wings flapping and the heavy weight of relentless punishment. This is the place where justice and crime meet, yet it leaves an unsettling feeling. Everyone in the family would either be imprisoned or executed. However, I have been rejected. Bird fish cannot be eaten. My only meal had been scorched. I would probably have to endure hunger and cold, but that was still better than dying. In the long run, it would actually be much better. He looked ahead with determined eyes, a sly smile curling on his lips. "I need to convince Phonia without lying, or I'll get expelled. If I mess this up, it's game over. Everything will end right then and there. No, it'll be worse than that, won't it?" As time passed, about a week before the apprenticeship started, Phonia still didn't drop her guard. She was in full battle mode, while Ed knelt before her, still lost in his thoughts. Why was the princess here? Suddenly, he stood up and cautiously approached her. "You came here without any guards, wearing simple clothes. That means you're taking the placement test." Professor Glass placement test, a mysterious man, involved launching magical orbs to test one's ability to find magic seeds in the forest. Ed closed his eyes and said, Professor Glass' test is known to be extremely harsh. Of course, if it's Princess Phoenicia, who aims for the best class, she'll choose Class A. She remained in a ready-to-fight stance, staring at him in surprise before questioning, Are you trying to flatter me? You haven't changed at all, have you? As expected, I should ask the Academy to expel you immediately. Before she could finish her sentence, Ed interrupted, saying, But without my help, Phonia's face immediately changed. A calm expression she had earlier was gone, replaced by surprise. Her eyes widened in disbelief. He leaned in closer to her, his face calm and confident, and said, You'll never make it into Class A if I'm lying even a little. Her expression still showed surprise, and the confusion hadn't faded. She replied, Well, you can just kick me out then. She stepped through a puddle of water and moved forward. According to Ed, if she went to the southeast lake in the forest, she'd find a small island with a huge tree growing in the middle. Phonia walked toward the tree, the surroundings bright and dazzling. That tree was called the Guardian Tree of Marilda's. There beneath the tree, something glimmered in the light. You'll find the gift I left for you. She picked up the magic seed, examining it with a critical look on her face, recalling the instructions Ed had given her. The name Ed Rossdaler from 3 days ago was definitely a fraud, and an incompetent one at that. She could still picture his panicked face when Princess Phonia caught him red-handed. She remembered the situation clearly. However, the image of Ed kneeling and thanking her now came to mind. Ed Rossdaler, as he was now. Under the tree's shade, she held a magical seed in her hand, reflecting on the stories she had heard earlier. It left her confused, unable to grasp what was really happening. The placement test had ended. The Academy stood before her like a grand, vast castle, its beauty and scale fitting for royalty. The expansive campus felt like it could belong to the nobles of a royal court. Inside one of the classrooms, a professor stood before the students calling out to them, holding up the magical seeds they had gathered. His serious expression, even a little intimidating, made him look at the students with intensity. He was Professor Glass, the magic instructor. The students below raised the seeds they had collected, gazing at him with eager eyes. He stared at them, silent and unsure of what to say next. Frustrated, he turned and ordered everyone to Class F. The students sighed in disappointment, unsure of what else they could do. What mattered most was understanding the true purpose of the test. This wasn't just about collecting magical seeds. Professor Glass raised 3 glowing gems, which should have been found by the students, and said, Only those who can find seeds with this kind of magical power will make it into Class A. Only 3 people found them. The first was Zix, his face grim and his eyes like emeralds. The second one is Lortell, with her striking orange-red hair and a proud smile. And finally, the person who found the seed in Marilda's protective tree, which contains unusually high magical power. He declared loudly, pointing to the distance, Yes, the one who found the seed was the one I had hidden. Phonia stood up at the teacher's call, her face serious. You will be the leader of the class. On the other side, someone was still feeling down because the only meal they had was a fish that had been burned. A sorrowful voice echoed, It's all burned. I don't have the strength to use the spear to catch more fish. The new creation needed a rough fishing rod made by cutting a branch with a knife, only using fabric, and replacing a hook with a small nail. It was fragile and very difficult to tell if the fish had bitten the hook. 1 star out of 5. His disappointed face showed as he hooked the worm onto the makeshift hook. He continued to think about her, the 3rd princess of the empire, Phonia Elias Kloll. Since she was young, Princess Phonia had seen through lies and deceit. She sat below, gazing up at those people with sharp, unwavering eyes, seeing right through their trickery. That sharp gaze was the result of an innate skill. Her yellow pupils, when activated with her X-ray vision, could see through any lie. No one could escape her perception. Therefore, there was no choice but to provide her with accurate information. As he thought about it, Abe slowly lowered his fishing rod into the water, but this led to an even bigger problem. The reason Princess Phonia would be known as the Princess of Love was because of her golden hair and her pure white dress, which made her look like an angel. After failing the placement test, she would be placed in Class F, and that's when everything would begin. However, Phonia, who had influence from the very beginning and an almost unbelieving look in her eyes when she heard Ed's advice about magic seeds, managed to find a hidden seed and get into Class A, the entire original storyline would start to fall apart. The image of her as the innocent, pure Princess of Love would be shattered. Even if he somehow managed to avoid being expelled, all the information he had would be useless. He'd be finished. Aid held his fishing rod and sighed, deep in thought. Of course, at that moment, Professor Glass's voice suddenly rang out, Class Leader Lucy Merrill. Phonia's face instantly darkened, unable to believe what she had just heard. The class leader was someone who was snoring and completely indifferent to anything that was happening around her. The future probably wouldn't change. Frustrated, she stormed off. Phonia was also deep in thought, seeing the truth clearly. This was definitely a magic seed. Ed Rossdaler hadn't lied, but her hand, holding the magic seed, started to shake. This isn't a gift. Why did Princess Phonia hide her true form from the beginning? She held the seed, standing in front of the giant tree, reflecting on everything. She felt embarrassed by the privileges she would receive if her true identity was revealed. She wanted to improve herself. She knew that this magic seed would yield the best results for her test. The image of the magic seed glimmered beneath the tree, but Phonia didn't take it because she hadn't found it herself. She left the magic seed where it was and walked away, her face showing clear dissatisfaction. The title of Princess of Love she would eventually receive wasn't a skill or stat boost. While everyone was praising Lucy, Phonia left the classroom with a dark expression. The title she received for following the correct storyline was actually a bait she had cast out for the princess. She remembered the words he had said to her. "You'll never make it into Class A. If I'm lying, you can kick me out." Whether it was a lie or the truth didn't matter. Halfway through, she stopped, reflecting on something. The princess would always care about it. If Ed really lied about the princess failing the test, suddenly she punched the wall hard. She would confidently finish it and punch him in the face. However, Ed hadn't lied. While she was lost in thought, a fish suddenly tugged at the line, causing the water to stir. Not being able to get into Class A, the princess now, Phonia, her face filled with anger, gritted her teeth and said, "Ed Rossdaler, I'll keep an eye on you. There's nothing more I can do." The fish bit the hook. He pulled up the line, a joyful look on his face as he caught a big one. Got one. The dawn began to break. I had to live in place. He quickly ran toward the academy. He had to run like crazy in the early morning to make it to school on time. While running, he was out of breath from exhaustion. After running for a while, he finally arrived, sweat soaking his clothes, still breathing hard. But I'm back. He stood before the academy, its magnificent campus scene making anyone wish they could study there. Sylvania Academy. A voice called out loudly for everyone to hear. The opening ceremony of the academy is about to begin. We're happy to see all the students who put in effort before the new semester starts. Feel free to enjoy the food while listening. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at Sylvania Academy made it easy to hear the murmurs welcoming me. Oh, look at him. How dare he show up to the opening ceremony? Does he plan to keep studying here? Other students whispered among themselves. He calmly sliced a piece of meat to eat. This is the reward of a winner. Just enjoy it. He put the meat in his mouth, surrounded by plates of meat that he had already finished, piled high like a mountain. This isn't Ed Rossdaler. My goal is to graduate. The gossip about him continued. The second-year upperclassman said the entrance exam was really tough. He looks a little different if you look closely. He eats so politely. I don't have any other purpose. I just want to graduate. The girls who had been talking about him moved on to another topic. I heard the dessert is from the head chef of Ophelis at that table over there. Let's go eat. We can chat during the break. What do you think, Anis? Sounds great, Clara. A soft, unfamiliar voice echoed. That's strange. Somehow I wish that. The pink-haired girl turned to look at him. He looks like someone else. Nothing unusual happened. The sky was clear, the air cool. A large, beautiful, yet modern school campus. Today was the opening day at Sylvania School. In the spacious lecture hall, students had gathered and the sound of lively chatter filled the room. I am very excited to meet new, talented faces this semester and to see the accomplishments you'll all contribute to Sylvania. However, in a room labeled Dean's Office, Ed walked out, his body stiff as if turned to stone. A dark cloud seemed to surround him. I was almost expelled. A middle-aged man with slicked-back hair stood there, smiling brightly and warmly. Who would have thought Phonia would tell the principal about me? Ed, feeling helpless, looked at him with suspicion. Seeing the older man smile and speak so cheerfully, he figured that she must have said something good about him after all. Ed parted his lips and sighed. Anyway, I got really lucky. I barely managed to avoid being expelled. His gaze became determined, resolute. It's best to stay careful and not stray too far from the original storyline. The system interface appeared with an icon shaped like a bow and arrow at the top. The details read, Combat Class, Apprentice Warrior, Specialized Weapon, Bow Proficiency Level 1. I now had survival skills to keep me alive. A pure white rabbit looked around in confusion, practicing magic spells suitable for a magic student. It couldn't even stay still for 3 seconds when an arrow suddenly shot out from somewhere, striking the rabbit's neck and causing it to collapse to the ground. There was no better weapon than a bow, especially when combining it with the use of both, because once I mastered survival skills better and could craft higher quality bows. He moved toward the rabbit, picking up the arrow still lodged in its body with one hand, while the other gripped a sharp knife. I'll be able to enchant the arrow with spirits and spells, he thought, although it's obvious that neither spirits nor spells are actually. Suddenly something made him freeze in shock. His eyes narrowed. Not far away, just across a river, a young girl with pink hair sat under the shade of an old tree, deeply absorbed in her book. Her name and natural talent in her own right was Janica Failover. She read with such focus that she didn't even glance away from her book. Her hair gently fluttered in the cool breeze. Janica Failover, a second-year student and the top of her class in the magical arts of elven sorcery, was completely lost in her own world. Suddenly, her gaze shifted and her cheeks turned slightly pink. She looked toward Ed and asked, "You're the funny person Marilda mentioned, right?" To Ed's surprise, Janica Failover instantly leaped from beneath the large tree, crossed the river, and appeared right in front of him. She smiled brightly, her voice full of cheer as she spoke. "Ed Rossdaler, right? I'm Janica Failover. I'm in my second year, just like you. You can call me Janica." Startled and a bit flustered by Janica's sudden appearance, Ed stammered, "Ha! When did she get here?" With a playful look in her clear eyes, Janica teased, "Ah, did I surprise you? You're wondering how I knew it was you, huh?" She happily waved her arms and legs as she spoke. "You see, this forest is the territory of Marilda, a high-level spirit. I spent a lot of time here listening to her tell me all sorts of things in my head." He curiously asked, "The owner of this forest tells you about me?" Janica Failover cheerfully replied, "Marilda can be a bit nosy sometimes, but everything in this forest is within her sight. How could she not notice an uninvited guest?" Ed paused, staring at the rabbit in his hands, thinking an uninvited guest. His face darkened slightly, and a hint of worry showed. He had indeed killed quite a few squirrels and chopped down many trees. Janica Failover, noticing his concern, moved closer to comfort him, causing him to feel awkward. "Don't worry about the little things. Creatures in this forest follow the natural rule of eat or be eaten. Marilda doesn't mind what you've done." Groot Taylor blushed a little, glancing away to avoid looking directly at her. "I guess even a giant, terrifying wolf has a kind heart, huh?" Janica Failover stared at him intently and suddenly realized something. She smiled brightly and said, "Surprised, right? Ha ha! Well, I have something I want to show you." Her eyes widened as she stretched out her hand toward him. In the palm of her hand, a faint glow of light in a soft shade of blue radiated. "Isn't it cute and lovely? I just met it yesterday, and I immediately made a pact with it." Ed stared intently at the thing in her palm, silently thinking, "A pact? Is it a spirit?" Noticing his reaction, she suggested, "Would you like to try touching it?" Ed Rossdaler hesitated for a moment, his lips slightly moving. "I can be friends with Janica anytime." But he clenched his hand into a fist, a bit of worry showing on his face. "I'm not a spirit, so I don't really know what makes it cute or lovely. Actually, I can't even see it." Janica Failover pretended to be surprised, asking, "You can't see the spirit?" Ed calmly turned to leave and replied, "Yeah, well, I came here to get food, so I'm going ahead now." Taylor's face darkened and showed clear dissatisfaction. He knew that only by following the original storyline could he gather useful information for himself. Janica Failover was incredibly important to the original plot. She had piercing red eyes and an emotionless face, surrounded by a dark, cold aura that he knew he was never allowed to approach. She kept her eyes fixed on his retreating figure. Her gaze gradually darkened, no longer the bright, sparkling look she had when talking to Ed. She remembered Ed's embarrassed, shy face as he had said, "I guess even a giant wolf, as scary as it is, still has a kind heart, huh?" Janica Failover was gently stroking something that emitted a soft blue light around it. "You were right, Marilda. He really is an interesting person," she said. It turned out that what she was stroking was a stunning wolf, glowing softly. As Janica continued to pet the wolf, she said, "Come to think of it, maybe he really couldn't see her all this time. Who is he anyway?" Then she jumped onto the wolf and lay down on its soft fur, sighing. "I tried so hard to get close to him, but all he ever says is, 'Uh-huh.'" "Uh-huh? What does that even mean?" "Good grief, you're so bloony. Well, we'll meet again someday." From above, everything around me is covered in a sea of green from the trees. In the center, there's a small lake. Right in the middle of the lake, there's a little patch of land where a tree is glowing brightly. I guess it's time to start figuring things out. Ha! A map appears showing hills and trees around. My home is really far from where I study. Ed is sweating, out of breath. I have to run like crazy from early in the morning just to get to class on time. Just the trip from home to school was enough to boost my health stats. It's kind of funny. He's serious, focused on his studies. If I want to get a scholarship, I need to work harder. I use a burning stick and some stones to take notes, then borrow books from the library to read more. His face looks worried and anxious while sitting by the river washing clothes. I wonder if they'll dry by tomorrow. On my way home, I take the chance to wash my sweaty clothes so I can wear them again the next day. You might think that washing clothes means my day is over, but no. He counts everything carefully. Why does this food smell kind of fishy? I also have to check if I have enough dry firewood, drinking water, and food for tomorrow's lunch. Because I have to do all of this, I only get about 4 hours of sleep each night. Ed started to get annoyed, furrowing his brow. But that wasn't what bothered me the most. He shouted over to Janica Failover, who was hiding. How long are you planning to keep following me? She jumped in surprise. Wait, you do? Hearing this, he got even angrier and yelled back. If you're hiding like that, then of course I'd notice. Ed's anger flared as he furrowed his brow even deeper. His eyes flashed with a purple light as he growled in frustration. Don't you know who I am? I'm Ade. Ed Rossdaler, the worst guy in the world. Why do you keep hanging around me like this? Janica Failover simply replied, well, those are just other people's opinions of you, right? Her words took him by surprise. She smiled brightly, her eyes full of light. I don't even know what kind of person you are. He frowned, looking confused. That makes sense. Janica Failover is exactly the kind of person who would say something like that. Janica Failover appeared with a soft, friendly, and radiant face. At first glance, she seemed innocent and naive, but in reality, she was a girl with an independent mind. But she was a different version of herself. Her eyes were fiery red, dark, and cold to the point where they gave me goosebumps. Since I already knew what awaited me in the future, I could respond to her with a big, cheerful smile. Because Janica Failover radiated a powerful, overwhelming energy capable of destroying the world. She was the final boss of Chapter 1. He shut his eyes tightly, grinding his teeth, cursing silently to himself. I'm the bad guy, I'm the bad guy, I'm a jerk, but she's the only one who ever smiles at Rossdaler. I didn't want to go this far, but here we are. This must be fate. So can you do me a favor? She beamed with excitement, her eyes sparkling as she asked, what is it? Ed Rossdaler's face darkened. Calmly, he said, you see, I'm really in a mess. My family has abandoned me, and I don't have a single penny to my name. He said something that left her frozen, unable to speak. So, could you lend me some money? Her eyes turned empty, as if she could no longer see the future. I mean, I'd borrow it and pay you back, not just take it. Friends help each other out in tough times like this, right? It'll just be for a short time. How much do you have? Janica always received the top scholarship every year, but talent alone wasn't enough for others to notice how extraordinary she truly was. Janica Failover pretended to study hard, reading every book to gain new knowledge. Her family was so poor that without a scholarship, she wouldn't be able to register for school or continue her studies. Janica came from a farming family, so her weakness was money. The two of them sat in a quiet, still moment. She seemed like she wanted to disappear from this world after saying, I'm sorry. He felt a little worried, sweating. Janica Failover. The weather was beautiful, clear skies, white clouds, and golden sunshine. 3 days later, Ed was still out hunting rabbits. I thought it wasn't the best idea, but I didn't want to get further tangled with the key characters in the story. His gaze turned sharp, full of determination. It was better to be careful not to stray too far from the plot. He had approached a hut made of tree branches. As soon as he peeked inside, he froze, dropping the bundle from his back. He was shocked, sweating profusely. What? What is this? In terms of importance, this character was even more crucial than Janica. Not just classmates, but even professors were in awe of this person, always mentioning them with admiration. This person was a rare genius and the strongest character in the failed Swordsman of Sylvania. It was Lucy Merrill. She lay there sound asleep, completely unaware of the world around her. She woke up, stretching out with a big yawn. How the heck did he end up sleeping here? He panicked and quickly backed away. What is he doing in this valley? The original story? We have to be careful. She sat up, feeling tired and downcast. It's too noisy. I couldn't sleep. He was completely confused. What did I do? Not you. She sleepily pointed behind him. It's that huge wolf over there. He froze, his heart racing in fear, his eyes widening. It's been talking to you this whole time? A wolf's head appeared around the corner, glowing with a blue light. He turned in shock and asked you for when that day comes. A massive wolf stood right in front of him. We have to save Janica at all costs. Ed Rossdaler, holding an axe in one hand and a rope in the other, said, let's get to work. Lucy's only been in this district for 2 days. Nothing has changed, right? But not long after, I realized that thought was way too complacent. Suddenly, the mission board appeared, joint combat practice. In the center, where the light shone down, was a fighting arena surrounded by the loud cheers of students. This was a literal simulated battle. A tall, muscular man was attacking his opponent with sheer strength. To minimize casualties, most combat students used fake weapons. A series of characters appeared. Princess Phonia, with her shining golden hair, Princess Lortell, confidently crossing her arms and staring ahead. Zix, with sharp eyes, Elementalist Janica, smiling brightly. Lucy, lazily lying on the white ground in a tired cloak. Wicked Clavius, with his sword resting on his shoulder and empty eyes. These characters could go on for days, but the most important one, after all, was the main character. Ross Taylor, with a determined look in his eyes, held his sword straight ahead. Your sword's a failure, Taylor. Next was a Taylor's fight. Ed's eyes sparkled as he gazed at the stands, his attention fixed. Someone was using their power to create a large whirlpool not far away, surrounded by thick smoke. On the arena floor, there was definitely a dent. Zix was surrounded by a green aura, which highlighted his confident demeanor. The winner of the battle practice session was a first-year student, along with the main character, Taylor, except for one unexpected incident. Suddenly, Janica appeared out of nowhere, happily saying, "Hey." To his disbelief, despite having asked her for money earlier, she still cheerfully came over to greet him. His expression darkened, and he gave her a disapproving look as she continued to smile and chat. "I've got the list of matches," she said. "If Lucy's like a stray cat, then Janica's like a cute little puppy." He turned his face away, refusing to look. "I'm not interested," he replied curtly. She laughed and asked, "Why? Aren't you curious about who I'll be fighting?" Ed Rossdaler froze, his eyes narrowing in shock and surprise. "Wait, I have to get in the ring too." He quickly looked at the paper, his face blank and confused. In the original story, Ed Rossdaler was already expelled by this point, so who was his opponent? This couldn't be right. Taylor clenched his fist, with his other hand on his chest, his voice clear and full of determination. "I'll show them." His eyes were filled with resolve, giving it his all. He smiled, watching closely. "That's right, who I'm fighting doesn't matter now. I have to focus on Taylor. Even though it's just through the screen, I've lived with Taylor's character for so long now." The image of Taylor kneeling, gripping the sword tightly, flashed in his mind. Game over, play again, yes, no. But the painful ending and the true conclusions were unforgettable. "Do you want to go back on that journey? I've been through countless times, among all the paths he could choose." He lowered his head, his eyes distant. "There's no easy path. I knew I would live my own life, but..." He clenched his fist, his eyes misty with tears, filled with admiration. "I'm still rooting for you, Taylor." Suddenly, the loudspeaker crackled, startling him. "I'll repeat. First-year Academy student Lucy Merrill. Is it our student named Lucy Merrill here?" Ed Rossdaler was so stunned that he broke out in cold sweat. "Please finish preparing and get to the arena." Where did Lucy disappear to? He helplessly stared in a black box where someone was deep asleep. Lucy covered her mouth with her hand, yawning involuntarily, then stepped onto the arena floor. "Let me finish my match first," she said. In her first year at the top of her class, Lucy Merrill was facing off against Taylor McClure. Taylor had been waiting for a while, already in position and ready to fight. He gripped his sword tightly, full of fiery determination. The main character of this world, born with the destiny to become a swordsman, had never even held a sword before. But with just one swing, his first ever sword strike in his life, he put all his strength into it, swinging the blade forward. A bright light surrounded him, and he was able to cut through Lucy's thunder magic with ease. Lucy was stunned, speechless. "I can't believe my eyes," she thought. "My spell. It didn't work?" She had been so sure of her victory, so confident that she would defeat her opponent. But now, nothing had happened. Taylor would definitely take advantage of her moment of weakness. Like a gust of wind, Taylor rushed toward Lucy, closing the distance in no time. Unexpectedly, Lucy cast a lightning-fast mid-tier lightning spell, striking Taylor. Huge, powerful green bolts of lightning surged across the arena, sending dust flying everywhere. Taylor was completely overwhelmed by Lucy's instinctive magic. But since she had used a mid-level spell, Lucy was disqualified. Taylor, covered in injuries but still gripping his sword tightly, was declared the winner. Abe, thinking back to that moment, closed his eyes and cried. It was a legendary scene. When Taylor and Lucy were both on the battlefield, the referee stepped forward and announced loudly, "All right, the match begins." The arena became the center of attention. Taylor, with a determined look in his eyes, raised his fist. "I'm here." Lucy calmly created a powerful magic array. The massive energy shot out. In less than 3 seconds, Taylor was blasted straight into the wall, dust flying everywhere. The crowd in the stands was in an uproar, with Ed probably the most shocked of all. She yawned tiredly and scratched the back of her neck. As she watched the scene unfold, the people in the stands began whispering, "It's over. There's no way he can beat the top-ranked academy. It's pretty clear." Charging a mage like it's a bare-knuckle fight, what did he think would happen? Taylor McClure's life had always been filled with challenges. His hand twitched slightly. Born as someone who could never seem to fit in, he had always been a failure, never achieving anything significant since entering the academy. His hand trembled, a defeated person who had never been acknowledged by anyone. He moved toward the Sword of the Sun and gripped it tightly. While everyone else thought he had lost, despite all the mockery, he stood up, his body battered and bruised, even in that moment of utter despair. From the stands, he looked down and smiled with hope. Taylor never. Taylor slowly got to his feet, a red aura swirling around him. Gives up hope. His smile grew wide, full of pride and satisfaction. That's it, buddy. You got this. Keep going. He charged toward Lucy, who was standing still. Her eyes widened in shock. Lucy Merrill, from the stands, his laughter grew louder and louder. At that moment, Lucy was preparing to cast a thunder spell, but unexpectedly, his eyes widened in disbelief, his pupils shrinking in alarm. Just as the sword was about to reach Lucy's face, a blast of green energy shot out, stopping Taylor's sword in midair. A powerful force radiated from it, making Lucy take a quick step back. Taylor, stunned and panicked, couldn't believe his eyes. The magic was like a mighty beast, fierce and regal, roaring with an overwhelming power. It created a huge whirlwind, launching Taylor high into the air. Taylor was thrown, crashing hard into the wall, which was surrounded by thick smoke. His body was slammed against the wall, then slowly slid down to the ground. And the most surprised person was still him, not by the lighting magic or Lucy, with her bright purple glow devouring everything in her path but by the wind. The referee's voice rang out, Lucy Merrill wins. Cheers and applause followed immediately. Taylor was knocked out, stunned, his eyes blank, hopeless. Ed was in shock, speechless, lost. Ayla said, tears filling her eyes. Without you, Taylor would have had to go through a really tough time anyway. She rushed out, spreading her arms wide to shield Taylor, stopping Ed from getting in closer. Don't bother him anymore, Ayla yelled at Taylor. Right after that, Taylor slowly stood up, his hand clenched into a fist, hesitating as he asked, are you still at the school? As soon as Taylor appeared, Ed seemed to realize something. His eyes widened, and he thought to himself, he's recovered. A warrior's spirit never falls, no matter how tough the enemy is. Ed Ross Taylor. Taylor called out his name with suspicion, stepping forward to stand protectively in front of Ayla. His eyes locked directly onto Ed's. Ed met Taylor's gaze and thought, his eyes are burning with determination. I get it now. He remembered the moment when Ayla ran off and realized that while he was facing the princess, Taylor's closest friend and his greatest source of support, had sprinted toward the door without looking back. Ed could almost picture Ayla slinging his arm around Taylor's shoulders, his body covered in battle stains, comforting him. You'll get through this too. It's what you're best at. Don't let this defeat get to you. Taylor's voice brought Ed back to the present, snapping him out of his thoughts. Why are you here? Do you have a problem with me? Both Taylor and Ayla looked at Ed with suspicion, as though questioning the intentions of someone who had once wronged them. Ed thought to himself, with Ayla by his side, Taylor would keep getting back up, over and over again. Ed hesitated for a moment, then found the right words to respond. Your swordsmanship is amazing. I get to see it again. Taylor, confused and extremely wary, asked, what are you plotting? Yeah, I've been through a lot with Taylor and stayed by his side until the very end. Being honest, Ed casually turned around and answered, not at all. In his mind, Ed recalled that he had once thought Taylor would save the world, so all he had to do was figure out how to survive. He had treated him differently because Taylor was the protagonist and would handle all the difficult tasks that Ed couldn't. But now, Ed felt at ease. A small smile tugged at the corner of Ed's mouth and his face softened. It wasn't because the plot had returned to its original direction, but because Taylor, the one he had fought alongside, was fine. That was enough for him. Looking at Taylor, his hands in his pockets, walking with contentment, both Taylor and Ayla were momentarily speechless, completely confused. But then they quickly reacted, still frozen in place, their whole bodies losing color as they simultaneously sneered. What the hell, why is he acting so cool? Well, I guess this was inevitable. Ed knew exactly how the two of them would react. He kept walking without looking back, but maybe he'd still need a few pairs of pants for this awkward situation. Suddenly, it was a loud crash. Ed spun around. A bright red light flared up behind him. A battle was taking place in the building next door. Ed Ross Taylor stayed calm, not the least bit surprised. Guess it's time, he muttered. According to the story, everyone would witness this while sitting in the nail building. He thought to himself, so the light is actually a powerful red dragon spitting fire and attacking. Then, a girl cast a magic circle. She launched an attack, instantly freezing the dragon. The ice quickly covered it, turning into a solid block of ice. But it didn't hold for long. As the ice cracked, another girl leaped straight onto the fierce dragon. She was a pink-haired girl with red eyes wearing a soft smile. It was Princess Lortell and the elf mage Janica Failover practicing their combat. And thought to himself, even though they're in different forms from their originals, I'm sure Taylor and Ayla are watching too. Just as he expected, Taylor and Ayla were wide-eyed. They were intently watching the intense battle unfolding before them. Taylor's eyes were filled with admiration and a bit of awe. Open your eyes wide, Taylor, because one of many challenges is heading your way, he silently thought to himself. At this moment, things seemed to be going badly for the red-haired girl. Her struggle and difficulty were clearly visible on her face. The fire dragon was in a fit of rage, blasting a powerful stream of fire at her from its mouth. But he knew that the final boss of Chapter 1 was Janica Failover. As she smiled, she made her move. All that could be seen was her beauty shining through the bright red flames. After the fierce battle with the dragon, a crowd gathered around the pretty pink-haired girl, constantly cheering and congratulating her. Wow! Congratulations, Janica. Janica is the only student in the grade to defeat the new students. She's got a great personality and amazing summoning skills. How are you so perfect? The girl smiled brightly and replied, thanks. Suddenly, the urgent voices of two men cut through, making her blink and look up in surprise. The patient is passing through. Please clear the way. Janica stood frozen, staring at the red-haired girl who had fought alongside her just moments ago. Now, she was covered in wounds, lying on a stretcher being hurriedly carried away by the two men. Meanwhile, the other students around her were still focused on Janica, chattering nonstop. How did your spirit familiar do that? Seriously, congratulations, Janica. You're definitely the pride of the second years. They continued talking without noticing Janica's blank expression and how she had frozen in place. Back to Ed's thoughts. Unlike the original story, Lucy had defeated Taylor. It ended with the main character joining the actual battle. This time, Janica Failover had become the defender of honor for the second-year students. Outside, more and more people were gathering around Janica. He kept thinking, brushing the dust off his jacket. Janica already had a lot of friends, but this accident would only make everything even crazier for her. Then he walked away, his back fading into the distance as his footsteps echoed toward the door. Well, it's probably for the best. I won't have to see her around the tent as much anymore. One evening at Ed's place, he was thinking about recent events, especially his involvement with the main character. His mind started to spin in panic. It had been 2 weeks since the last real-life training session, and without the main character around, he could focus on his studies and survive without worrying so much anymore. Ed glanced for the cage by the creek. Since he had a fishing net, food was temporarily taken care of. He brushed the wet hair off his face, and his blue eyes stared at the stats on the screen in front of him. Ross Taylor's body was clearly more muscular than before. His toned muscles were visible under his skin. He quietly thought, asterisk, is this because my stamina stats are going up? I feel stronger every day. It's still too early to get lazy, asterisk. As Ed reminded himself to stay focused, he walked around. Unintentionally, Janica was hiding in some nearby bushes, her hands slightly covering her flushed cheeks as she caught sight of his muscular, wet body, wearing nothing but his shorts. She let out a soft gasp. Embarrassed, she asked, Ed, do you like being naked? Ed jumped, startled by Janica's sudden appearance. Flustered, he yelled and pointed at her, what are you doing here? And what the heck are you saying? I just got back from fishing. Both of them turned bright red. Calming herself, Janica walked closer to the fire as Ed spoke up. What's so special about this place that you keep coming back to it? Sitting on a nearby log, she answered, this is my secret spot. It makes me feel like an adventurer. That's exciting. She glanced at the fire, a little shy, and then added, I wanted to talk to you for a bit. I also need some advice. Really? He raised an eyebrow, putting on his shirt as he thought, asterisk, why my asterisk? She continued, her voice more serious now. You left early last time, so you probably didn't notice, but in the last battle, I injured someone. The image of Lortell, lying on the stretcher, looking so worried and in pain, kept haunting me. Ed thought for a moment, a hint of judgment in his tone. Wasn't her opponent using mid-level magic? That's forbidden magic. Well, I guess that doesn't matter to someone with a kind heart like you. Janica's voice grew quieter, a bit sadder as she went on. I tried to forget, but maybe I tried too hard. I just can't get those thoughts out of my head. I get it, Ed replied. She looked at him and asked, should I go apologize to her, even though my friend will stop me and say it's her fault first? Without hesitation, he answered naturally, then go ahead if you think it's the right thing to do. She was a bit surprised for a moment and looked at him. Looking at Janica, Ed thought to himself, the second-year student, lively and sweet, was a precious gem in so many ways to everyone, with her bright, radiant smile. As she hugged her knees tighter, he continued to think, so if she feels guilty or blames herself, people will come to support her and stand by her. Ed glanced at Janica. It's nice to have someone by your side no matter what happens, but that still doesn't erase what's already happened. I guess that's why you came to me. Just as expected, Janica Failover stretched her arms and smiled contentedly. You never stand by me unconditionally. Ed interlaced his fingers and looked at her. Sorry if I offended you. Janica quickly waved her hand. No, you misunderstood. I'm not offended at all. She had a thought in her mind. He was different from last year. Ed, in part, seemed to understand who she was. Janica, could be a cheerful, lively girl, but she was also very perceptive. Janica began to think about Ed as well. Even when she asked to borrow money during tough times, he can show the desperation that most people did. This guy was indirectly telling her not to get too close. But those sides of him strangely made Janica feel at ease. Smiling, she said, "Actually, I feel more at ease now. I wish more people in the world were like you." That night was an unusually peaceful evening. The tiny light from the fireflies and the rustling sounds of the trees only made the scene more beautiful. No one knew what was about to happen. The next morning at Sylvania Academy, Ed quickly walked down the hallway, his face dark and his mood far from calm. He thought, "This is bad." The failed swordsman of Sylvania is called a masterpiece. Very few people ever get to see the ending. New players will encounter many bad endings in the beginning. For example, if you save a girl from a dung beetle in the bushes during the placement exam, you'll uncover the princess's secret. She'll send people to kidnap Taylor, and that leads to bad ending 3. Taylor gets assassinated. During the monster slaying training, if you ignore your childhood friend Aylatrice and form a relationship with a princess, bad ending 7 will occur. Aylatrice dies from falling off a cliff, and the reason is that Taylor should have saved her before she fell. If you protect the princess from the fire elemental summoned by Janica, bad ending 3 will happen again. Taylor gets burned to death. I have to run to her right away. Suddenly, a woman's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Senpai, can you not hear me?" Ed jumped, then said, "Why are you following me around like that?" The girl replied, "I didn't expect you to grit your teeth and ignore me for so long." Ed visibly frowned. "Of course, I have to grit my teeth and ignore you. Isn't it obvious?" He looked at her and thought to himself, the 4th heroine of the failed swordsman Sylvania, the only daughter of the business tycoon El Ketchel, also known as the one who crushes new recruits. She, with ribbons wrapped around her body, looked at Ed with a confident gaze. The girl, with red hair and bright blue eyes, smiled and asked, "I'd like to buy 2 hours of your time, Senior A." As she spoke, Lortell casually slipped the money into the hem of her shirt. "Keep it. I think the more people on my side, the better," she added. The 3 coins jingled and landed in Ross Taylor's pocket. His gaze became thoughtful, as if he figured something out. She sensed, purely by instinct, that she would have to fight Princess Phonia through politics to take control of the academy, and that she needed to start gathering allies right now. Along with that came an image of Lortell, eyes gleaming with cunning, standing in Phonia's shadow. The corner of his mouth curled upward, as though he understood exactly what was happening. He extended his hand toward Lortell and said, "All right, then. At least, let's shake on it." Thinking she had achieved her goal, her eyes revealed a calculating glint. She reached out her hand, her mind drifting to those who had lived their whole lives in luxury. A little bit of poverty was enough to shatter their hearts. The two shook hands, but surprisingly, for people in their situation, even a small amount of money was enough to make them collapse. They would sell everything, their wealth, their dignity, and even themselves, all in the pursuit of money. The metaphor here is violence. The man, with his sunken face in poverty, grabbed the few coins that another had disdainfully thrown his way. It's so easy to lure people like this, which is sadly true. It shouldn't be this way. She stood there stunned after he left. The 3 gold coins, which had somehow ended up in her possession, were now back in the hands of Lortell Ketchel. She knew for sure that Abe had used their handshake as an excuse to return them. She wasn't angry. She just watched Ed Rossdale's figure disappearing into the distance, thinking to herself, "Interesting." Meanwhile, as Ed walked away, the tension was unbearable. He clenched his teeth and thought, if I accepted it, I could have lived better. But if I did, it would be so shameful. Ed couldn't even begin to imagine the nightmares he'd have to face if he got caught in the middle of the new recruits being crushed in Janica's schemes. And then he made a firm decision. No matter what, he had to avoid anything that would divert him from the original path. That night, at the Sylvania Academy dormitory, Lortell Kekin didn't feel hurt by the blunt rejection or the insult. She was fully aware of her strengths and weaknesses, the advantages and self-interest she carried. As a perfect entrepreneur, she never let an opportunity slip by when it was within reach. At that moment, Lortell Kekin walked out in her pajamas and met Janica Failover. "Oh, I didn't expect to see you here," she said. Janica responded, "Oh, it's you, Lortell. You look different with your hair down." The opportunity right in front of her stirred Lortell Kekin's unyielding spirit. She was determined to make Janica Failover pretend to be an ally. Her green eyes gleamed like those of a crafty serpent. Recalling their previous sparring match, Janica began to speak. "You know, people have been talking a lot about you for using the banned intermediate level spell in the group battle. It's been a while, but if I get the chance, I just want to apologize." As she listened, Janica nodded, showing sympathy. Meanwhile, Lortell thought to herself, "I just wanted to see how the top second-year student would react. Still, I know I'll have to pay a pretty high price for it. Looking at Lortell Ketchen's arm wrapped tightly in bandages, Janica asked with genuine concern, "Your injury still isn't healed?" Lot smiled brightly and answered, "It'll probably heal soon. You don't need to worry too much, Senior Janica." The young princess began to think to herself. Janica reminded her of the main characters in fairy tales. Would using her sense of guilt make it easier to control her? However, she was immediately caught off guard by Janica Failover's question. "I assume your conversation with Ed went smoothly, right?" She instinctively asked. "Why do you say that all of a sudden?" Janica leaned slightly to the side, giving her usual harmless smile. She had told them to hold back when it came to personal matters, but the fairies loved gossip. As she spoke, 5 fairies appeared around her, each glowing with the colors representing fire, earth, water, metal, and wood. The power radiating from this woman was enough to make Lortell Ketchen cautious. "You know," Janica continued, "I can hear almost every conversation happening around the northern part of the forest." A bit hesitant, Lortell replied, "I mean, even so, I'm still touched that you're willing to invest money for my sake." Janica said this while thinking about the deal Lortell had proposed during their conversation with Ed. Her expression darkened as she approached Lortell. "Don't you know that money can't buy sincerity?" She thought again about Ed's actions, recalling the moment Ed had returned the 3 gold coins to Lortell. She continued, "For me, your choice means even more." After showing such overwhelming confidence earlier, Janica now returned to her innocent, harmless demeanor. The girl blushed slightly, saying, "I guess I've gotten a bit too proud of her. Since it's my first time being a senior, I might have talked too much. I'm embarrassed." However, Lortell Ketchen remained cautious, thinking, "I need to keep an eye on her. I have to go now. It takes a lot of preparation to make a pact with a high-level spirit. Recently, I've received a lot of support, so I have to push myself even harder," Janica said before turning and leaving under the moonlight streaming through the academy's window. Lortell Ketchen realized something. Janica Failover had a lot in common with the main character of a fairy tale. I was wrong. A perfect person? Not at all. Janica Failover suddenly stopped in front of the door and said before leaving, "Oh right, Lortell, I'm sorry about the other day. You got pretty hurt because of me, didn't you? I hope you'll recover soon." She said this with a look and smile full of hidden meaning. Lortell thought for a moment. Even though she fully understood the dark side of this world, Janica still managed to keep up her cheerful personality. Click. The door shut as Janica Failover left, leaving Lortell standing with her arms crossed in the same spot. She tilted her body slightly and whispered, This is going to be tough." Her brows furrowed slightly, but just a moment ago, Janica had looked strangely tense. Now, behind the door of Janica Failover's room, she no longer hid her inner tension. Sitting with her back against the door, she hugged her knees and looked up, speaking softly to herself. "I have to try harder because it's really nice that people are placing their hopes in me." One morning, the weather was clear and the sun was high in the sky. The sunlight shone down on Taylor's clothes drying on the line. Nearby, a girl named Lucy looked at the pile of clothes and visibly grimaced, saying, "It smells so bad." Suddenly, a loud bang rang out. Taylor's clothes were struck with force, dust flying as they scattered everywhere. He shouted, "Oh, I just hung those up." Then he noticed the presence of a stranger. He looked in their direction, still with a shirt draped over his head, and asked, "Wait, who's that?" It turned out to be Belmaya, the head maid of the upscale dormitory, Alphalis Hall. The short-haired girl stared at him with piercing golden eyes. Her outfit clearly marked her as a maid, and she carried a basket in her hand. Ed remembered her now. She was the one who had kicked him out of there. Ed Rostaylor gave an awkward smile and said to her, "Oh, you mean this?" Belmaya looked around at his place. Her voice was cold and serious, almost like a stern authority figure. "I knew you were here. Miss Janica has told me a lot about you. Still, I didn't realize you were living like this." She glanced at him again and added, "I'm glad you've noticed the positive changes, and I have to say, I'm impressed." Ed wondered where, but he could only mumble in response. Belle's words seemed to pass right through one ear and out the other, while his gaze remained firmly fixed on the ground. Inside his head, a whirlwind of thoughts raced. The maids at the Ophilis Hall were a group of elite women responsible for keeping the living spaces spotless, including cooking meals for the students. His eyes were glued to the basket Belmaya held as if it were a treasure. Ed kept thinking to himself that the basket must contain the finest ingredients the maid had gathered from the forest. These were the kinds of high-level details he couldn't learn just by reading books. He examined the basket, trying to figure it out. Belmaya's involvement was significant to the main story. Meanwhile, she continued speaking, "You don't have to be so formal." Her eyes remained cold and distant. "Just talk to me like you used to back at Ophilis." Suddenly, Ed replied, "Never mind." Belmaya widened her eyes in surprise. After a moment of thought, Ed came to a conclusion. Belmaya didn't have any direct influence on the main storyline after all. His attitude immediately shifted to one of flattery, and he began trying to win her over. How could I speak so casually to a hardworking maid like you? As for the basket, he spoke with a pleading tone, silently thinking, well, being friends with her should be fine, right? The system screen displayed the message. You have been given an explanation of the edible mushrooms, herbs, and vegetables from Belmaya. The basket was filled with edible ingredients that could be found right in the forest, a treasure to Ed. With the creation complete, his craftsmanship skill increased and the system announced. New item, fishing net. You've woven the net properly, attached it to a branch, and set it up to avoid collapsing when exposed to groundwater. The fish caught in the net will survive for several days. Difficulty, 2 stars. In addition to the fishing net, the place where he stayed now also had drying racks for storing meat. I gathered so much meat and fish. My food supply should be sorted soon. Placing the gold cup, now filled with water and some ingredients, in the middle of a pile of firewood and stones, he called out loudly, ignition. A bright red flame immediately flared up beneath the cup. Ed looked at the screen displaying the fire magic, ignition level 10, wind magic, and windblade level 10. He thought, I still only have 2 basic spells, but I've used them so much that I'm completely fluent in them without even realizing it. The tea was ready. Its fragrance spread through the air. The screen lit up again. Asterisk, asterisk, new product. Herbal tea. Tea made from the herbs Belmaya showed you. Difficulty, 1.5 stars, asterisk, asterisk. Ed continued thinking, asterisk, using these for chopping wood or cooking has really improved my survival skills. The proof is, asterisk, as he thought, he lifted his cup of tea. To avoid burning his fingers, he held a small leaf between his hand and the hot cup. The sunset unfolded before him, the sun gradually sinking below the horizon. Ed Rossdaler sat there, satisfied that he had finished his work before nightfall. Honestly, this was kind of fun. The more he thought about it, the more he smiled, completely content like he had achieved exactly what he wanted. Suddenly, he looked up and saw a star shining brighter than any other. It seemed to be heading straight toward him. At that moment, his train of thought ended. Asterisk, asterisk, boom, asterisk, asterisk. A deafening explosion echoed as the star shot down like lightning. Both Taylor and his tent were sent flying. Amid the thick cloud of dust and smoke, Ed lay in the flattened remains of his campsite. Stunned, he gasped. Asterisk, asterisk, what the hell? My tent, asterisk, asterisk. Ed looked sadly at the wrecked tent. Where the star had fallen, he could hear the sound of coughing. It seemed lucky for Ed Rossdaler, because the star wasn't a monster, but Lucy. The girl with silver hair and purple eyes was sitting in the crater she had made when she fell from the sky. I almost died, she said, coughing violently from the smoke and dust. She was still wearing her pajamas, and a mystical purple glow surrounded her like a magical aura. Ed Rossdaler stared at the girl in the midst of the smoke, shocked. Lucy, he thought, in the deep crater in the ground, created by her fall. Lucy was sitting trying to gather herself. Her heart was still racing from the close call, and she muttered, I almost died. Ed Rossdaler stood up, brushing the dust off his clothes, and looked at Lucy. Ha, you almost died? He wondered to himself, who is the most powerful sorceress on the continent talking to right now? She stayed sitting, still shivering, as she called out the maid's name, Belmaya. Even though Ed already knew who it was, he asked anyway, who's that? Are they a good person? Lucy shuddered as she remembered the image of the maid Belle, her eyes bloodshot and filled with murderous intent, fists clenched as she marched toward her. I was acting normal, but for some reason she became so sensitive. She came closer, her fists tightening. Lucy lowered her gaze slightly, feeling embarrassed as she continued. I was so shocked, I just ran. Ed moved closer, concerned. That must have hurt, huh? He glanced at Lucy, letting out a sigh as he climbed out of the large hole. She replied, of course. Ed gritted his teeth, his face darkening as he muttered to himself, Oh, Belmaya, what kind of life have you been living? After causing the earlier trouble, Lucy calmly asked, Do you have any food left? Suddenly, a small branch flew from Ed Rossdaler's hand and hit her in the head. Ed shouted angrily, Are you still asking? You blew everything away already. Lucy let out a soft cry, rubbing her head where the branch had struck. Ed was surprised and muttered, No magic protection. She must have sensed his confusion, so she explained, My magic ran out, still rubbing the spot on her head. Ha, really? Ed Rossdaler said, his voice dark. Her eyes widened, filled with tears. Ed's face had never shown such anger before. He raised his hand in front of her forehead, his fingers poised to flick her. He said, This is the punishment for destroying my home. Then Lucy's scream echoed through the forest. It was clear how furious he was. He continued, And this is for dear, oh so motherly Miss Belmaya. The scene shifted to the school library. Ed Rossdaler was determined in his thoughts that he needed a stronger house. He muttered to himself, "All right, let's just build a real wooden house. Living a busy life like mine, it's so convenient to get all the information I need at once just by coming to the library." He closed the book he had just been reading and said to himself, "Design data, necessary materials. All that's left is trimming the trees and finishing the roof right." A voice made him look up. It's closing time. The girl with pink hair approached Ed, who was sitting between two stacks of books he had been studying, and said, "You're studying hard, senior." Ed replied, "Oh, is it already closing time? Sorry about that." The girl with ponytails on both sides flashed a cute smile at him. That was Elka Island, a first-year magic student. Smiling warmly, she said, "If I see someone like you, who is so focused on studying, it really motivates me to study too. My name is Elka Island." Her gray eyes sparkled as she stared at him with admiration. He broke into a sweat and thought, "What's going on? That look is so intense. Does she want to know my name?" Ed slightly turned his head, looking away as he answered, "I'm Ed Rossdaler." As soon as Elka heard his response, her face immediately showed a reaction Rossdaler knew all too well. The excitement on her face quickly vanished. Ed thought, "Just as I expected, my reputation isn't going to disappear that easily. A bad reputation is one of the hardest things to shake off in this academy." But compared to the rumors, Elka's attitude was completely different. She continued, "In just a few days, you've finished all the books on elemental science that I've always found hard to understand. Even now, you're sitting there reading so diligently, and you've already gone through more than 6 specialized books in one go." As she spoke, her eyes stayed fixed on the stack of books next to him. She continued, "Why is there a rumor that you're someone who doesn't know anything and just pretends to be skilled?" She laughed cheerfully, clearly unable to believe the gossip. The image of Ed Rossdaler walking proudly in his red cloak popped into her mind. "I'm lucky to have the chance to know someone as genuine and talented as you. That's why I'll support you with all my heart." Elka clenched her hands together, her voice even more excited than before. Ed replied, "Thank you." As she prepared to leave, Elka Iceland waved goodbye to Ed Rossdaler. "Take care on your way home. I'll clean up here for a bit and then head back to the dorm." Suddenly, there was a loud rumble. The ground started to shake. What's going on? Ed Rossdaler widened his eyes, and both of them struggled to stay on their feet amid the unexpected tremors. Elka quickly glanced at the nearby bookshelf, where several books were tumbling toward her. The screen shifted to a mystical purple hue, signaling the system. Chapter 1, Final Section. The Glassen battle begins. A massive magical circle appeared in the sky above the academy. From its center, a powerful beam of light shot straight down, creating an enormous shockwave. It was 11:30 a.m. at the temporary base near the Student Assembly Center. With the active presence of the main character, Taylor's group, many students were probably joining in. At this moment, a dark purple hue had covered the entire academy. 2 hours had passed since the unexpected event occurred. It was something I had read about in the book, The Soul of Magic. From inside a building, the sound of lively discussion could be heard. "That's the highest level dark soul," one person spoke up. "That's the Glaskin summoning circle. The center of the massive circle is emitting a purple aura full of overwhelming energy." Themia Kloll, who was leading the discussion, crossed her arms and said seriously, "This is bad news, because only someone with the ability to sense souls at such a high level can summon such a powerful dark soul. The most likely person behind this is our enemy, the valedictorian of the second-year class. Until Phonia continued, "Unfortunately, this isn't the right time to do this, but as Ayla said, we shouldn't waste any more time." Taylor McClure suddenly spoke up, getting Phonia's attention. "If Glaskin is summoned, the casualties will be much higher. We need to get inside the student hall now." He raised his hand firmly. Claire, the captain of the Royal Guard, added her voice with concern. "People outside the barrier will quickly realize what's happening. If the Royal Guard and the professors deal with this situation, it will be over quickly." Alvira Anishin, a first-year advanced class student known for always getting involved, put her hands on her hips and added, "If this is the barrier created by a high-level shadow spirit within the academy, it will be very strong. Outside help will have a hard time getting through. This needs to be handled internally, and with Principal Obel away, we're on our own." She then spoke directly to Phonia, Taylor, and the others around them. "But if everyone here works together, even a high-level spirit could be defeated, right?" Taylor and Ayla seemed to agree. Clibius Nortendale, a first-year combat student, curled up in fear. His face was full of terror. He spoke up. "I oppose it." He explained that they had defeated all the spirit beasts and entered the building to confront Janica. These once gentle spirit beasts were now tainted with dark energy. He continued, "But that's not all. A purple wave of power shot through, and there are high-level elementals inside the tower. I think there are 2 of them." His voice grew more fearful. The high-level fire elemental, Tarkan, and the high-level dark soul philosopher have taken control inside. The dark soul is taking the form of a humanoid creature with a goat's head, and its wings are like those of a bat. Tarkan, the fire elemental, which used to be bright red, now carries an evil aura, and their eyes burn with hostility. Clevius Mortendale clutched his head and screamed in panic. Charging in there would be like suicide. I can't go. Lortell Ketchum hesitantly spoke up. But are you sure that person did all of this alone? Even if they're the top of the second-year class, that kind of magic seems way too powerful. Summoning and maintaining a dark soul, that's not easy at all. Ilatrice rested her hand on her chin and continued, it's probably mainly due to the power of the dark soul, philosopher. Senior Janica is just a vessel for him to control. The dark soul, the natural enemy of spiritual believers, is a power that no one can control. In fact, they're demons trying to disrupt the peace of this continent. The high-level dark soul Vosper appeared in their minds. A demon was controlling Janica Failover like a puppet on strings. The dark soul's threads were tightly bound to her, making her act according to his will. This is why all spiritual practitioners keep their minds pure, staying far from the darkness. They don't want to be corrupted by it. Ayla continued, however, Senior Janica is more skilled than anyone else in the dark elemental sciences. Along with her words came the image of the demon's blood-red eyes, which looked dangerously intense. She added, no one knows how Vosper managed to use her and control Senior Janica's soul. One of the guys present suddenly interrupted, saying, that's not important anymore. Six continued, what matters now is deciding our next move. Only one person can make that decision. He looked sharply at her and suggested, Princess Phonia, please tell us what to do. Phonia glanced back, hesitating in silence. All eyes were on her. The one most suited for the leadership role, and everyone was waiting for her decision. Suddenly, the words of the indifferent guy from before flashed through her mind. Phonia pressed her lips together as she recalled the moment she heard Ed Rosstiller's words. No matter what burdens I carry, they can't compare to the weight the princess has to bear right now, right? You're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions, and none of them will be easy. His words rang so true to the situation Phonia Kloll was facing now. She silently wished, I wish I could live as carefree as he does. Finally, like a true leader, Phonia Kloll spoke up, giving her orders. 1 hour from now, we will move in, but... She continued, this includes me and my escort, Claire, as well as the top students from each class and students from Class A. Only those whose skills have been proven will be allowed to enter. So, everyone, get yourselves ready. Everyone listened in silence, and each person wore a different expression. The royal guard looked a bit tense, while Zix remained calm. Alvira Anishan was excited, showing her sharp teeth in a grin. Lortell just listened quietly, without revealing much emotion. Taylor and Ayla were the most determined and passionate. As for Clevius, he still looked scared. Theonia declared firmly, I will take full responsibility for leading this battle. Suddenly, someone stepped forward, kneeling respectfully before the princess and said, Princess, what about the others? Audrey Hall and some of the mages are sitting out, protesting and refusing to participate. It's hard to expect much from them right now. He spoke urgently. The princess replied, her voice heavy with sadness. In truth, we're the only ones who can act in this battle. The male student added, also, not many other students share the same opposing views as they do. Suddenly, a girl appeared, running frantically toward Phonia. She said, actually, there are still people who can help us. When I was at the student library, there was just one trainee librarian and a second-year student left. Phonia asked in surprise, really? What are their names? The girl answered, Elka Iceland. Zix seemed almost agitated by this information. It was clear that Elka Iceland was someone very important to him. He immediately grabbed the girl's shoulders, repeatedly asking as if trying to confirm the truth, Elka, really? The girl, taken aback by Zix's reaction, replied, yes. We're studying Grimoire's management together in the trainee librarian class. Zix's expression showed both urgency and concern for Elka. He quickly turned around, ready to leave, after hearing the girl's confirmation. Damn it, we have to find her right now. Elka can't defend herself. Even Princess Phonia was caught off guard by Zix's intense response. Both Princess Phonia Kloll and Princess Lortell Ketchum quickly stepped forward to stop him. One by one, they tried to calm him down. Lortell spoke first. Calm down, Zix. The library is still quite a ways off. There's no rush. Right now, the first thing we need to do is deal with Senior Janica. She's the one who caused all of this. Then it was Fionia's turn. That's right, Zix. Also, there's another second-year student in the student library. Why don't we trust that person for now? Styx, still full of worry, asked, huh? Who is it? Theonia turns to the girl with purple hair and asked again, hey, is there still another student in the library? The girl nodded and answered, yes. Before the princess could stop him, Zix charged at the girl, grabbed her by the collar, shook her up and down, and yelled, stop hiding it. Tell me, who is it? Though scared by his temper, the girl replied, Ed Rossdaler. Six's hands were still gripping the girl's shirt, but his eyes burned with killing intent as soon as he heard the name. The girl, with 2 lines of tears streaming down her face, explained, I'm sorry that person sat there until late. I was so frustrated that I gave the task to Elka and just walked away. You all know what kind of person that is, right? Elka doesn't care about rumors like that, so she. The atmosphere around them shifted slightly. Everyone thought of the terrible reputation that person had, which had already spread to every corner of the academy. The 2 students standing behind added, Ed Rothstaler, that immoral guy and the librarian, always by himself in the library. Damn it. It seemed they realized they had just provoked the monster in front of them, but it was too late. Phonia spoke up, wait. Only Phonia Kloll and Lortell Kekenchen, the 2 people present, had noticed the positive change in Ed Rothstaler, but they couldn't stop Zix's anger. She stepped forward, spread her arms to block everyone, and said, Hold on, everyone. Realizing this was really hard to explain, she hesitated, then added, But should we trust that person just once? The intense light from the magical formation above continued to shine down. Claire, Taylor, and Ayla stood frozen, stunned by her words as if they couldn't believe their ears. She looked toward Lortell, but it seemed pointless. Lortell was just as awkward as she was, his face as dark as Zix's. In the blink of an eye, he released the purple-haired girl and soared into the sky. No one could stop him now. The Dark Souls roared viciously when they saw him, but that didn't make him hesitate. Filled with overwhelming rage, he silently warned, if he dares to touch even a single hair on Elka, I'll make sure he dies in pieces. His fury exploded, crashing into the monsters and causing the head of one to fall from its neck, while another was split in 2. His anger was matched only by his concern for Elk Iceland. He growled and shouted Ed Rothstaler's name, only speaking one phrase, a dragonborn in a miraculous, unexplainable stream of Zix. Zix hid in the grass, waiting for his prey. He crouched low, evaluating the creature, noting its size. It was a full-grown male. Judging by the state of the surrounding plants, it had just passed through here. His gaze shifted, focusing intently on the target ahead. Behind the bushes, a wild animal had fallen within his sights. Quickly, Zix dashed forward, followed by his sharp, pointed dagger ready to strike the creature. He thought to himself, in the northern plains of the Empire, a savage land where even the power of the royal family cannot reach, it's a strange world. Here, the day comes to an end. The creature seemed to sense something dangerous. It turned its head, but it was too late. Zix and his dagger were already above its head. In this dangerous land, you've had to count yourself lucky if your head wasn't severed from your body. Instantly, blood poured out of the creature. Zix was a descendant of a nomadic people who lived there, but he had been lost during his upbringing. He didn't know when he had been cast into the world of humans. Why had he been lost? He had no idea if he would ever return to the life he once had there. He had learned to slit the throat of a deer before he had learned to read. Instead of buying things at a store, the first thing he had been taught was how to steal goods from the corpses left by the roadside. Hard to believe, right? As these thoughts ran through his mind, he carried his spoils back, still lost in his thoughts. The creature's head had been severed from its body. He dragged the bloody head through a crowded market. People passing by couldn't help but gasp in horror at the sight of the dead animal, its blood-stained body being pulled along the ground. Whispers quickly spread around. Isn't this guy from the northern plains? The descendants of those savages, they say they even eat human flesh. The carcass of the deer continued to be dragged along, leaving behind a trail of blood that hadn't even dried yet. This was the life of a wild beast. Suddenly, a little girl stood in front of him, curiously asking, "What's your name?" Taken by surprise, he froze for a moment, unable to respond. The girl stayed there, her eyes expectant. After a slow pause, he finally answered, "Zix." The girl smiled brightly and said, "Oh, you look just like a wolf walking on 2 legs." Her voice was cheerful, her expression full of warmth, completely different from the fearful reactions of everyone else. In that beautiful moment, Zix felt like he understood something new. The girl was surprised, her wide eyes never leaving him. He stood there, thinking about himself, a life spent wandering the vast, endless northern plains. He had once used the moon as his roof, slept, and ate the carcasses of animals lying along the road. It was very likely that he had been a wolf cub abandoned by its pack. He dropped his staff, and the girl, worried, asked, "Are you okay, Zix?" At her words, he started crying. He thought about himself again and realized, I really have lived such a lonely life. The first time I met my companion, I only then understood what loneliness truly felt like. Elka and her father welcomed me like family as I embraced the fast-paced rhythm of human civilization. The wild, savage life had become a distant past. A wolf cub had become a true human, but if it meant protecting her, I would be willing to turn into a monster once more. Scene change. Now at the academy, he was desperately searching for Elka. He rushed to ask someone, and that someone was Ed Rothstaler. Him. Ed Rothstaler was a man of vile character, someone who cheated in exams, insulted the princess, and played dirty tricks with younger female students. He ran down the hallway like a gust of wind and finally found Ed Rothstaler. Ed Rothstaler looked up, surprised, as the person charged toward him. "What's going on? Who are you?" Before Zix could even ask, he rushed over and grabbed Ed Rothstaler by the collar, demanding urgently, "Where's Elka? What did you do? Where is she? Tell me now." Ed Rothstaler replied, "She's in room 3 of the library." Without wasting a second, Zix sped off to find Elka. As he ran, he called out her name. When he reached room 3 of the library, Zix quickly opened the door. "Are you okay, Elka?" he asked. But strangely, Elka seemed fine. She was fast asleep, lying peacefully on the bed. Zix stepped closer and sighed in relief. "Thank goodness," he muttered, rubbing his forehead as he caught his breath. "That's such a relief." Zix furrowed his brow and looked around. Something caught his attention. He wondered, but now that I think about it, those huge bookshelves, the kind that even a grown man would struggle to lift, are all set up around her, like they're protecting her, and the curtain is positioned to block the view of the rising spirits. Zix's gaze then shifted to the chalkboard. He placed a hand on the letters and read aloud. "When you wake up, don't panic and stay here. Everything will be over by dawn, so stay calm, block the entry, and don't anger the spirits. Always prioritize your safety, and don't move hastily." Zix paused after reading the words on the board. Someone had tried to protect Elka. Suddenly, Zix spotted a red coat. It looked like the Academy's uniform, but strangely, it was stained with blood. Blood? This isn't Elka's blood. This is... He looked toward the bloodstains still on the floor. The stains pointed toward the large door he had just entered. From the blood trail, Zix quickly realized who had tried to protect Elka. Even though he's injured, he can take care of himself. This is the blood of the person who protected Elka, Ed Rothstaler. But why? 3 hours ago, while books were falling and bookshelves were being knocked over, Ed Rothstaler had still tried to protect Elka, who was unconscious and draped over his shoulder. One hand carried Elka, while the other supported a collapsing bookshelf. At that point, Ed's head was injured, but he kept pushing forward. As he propped up the bookshelf, Ed said, "Well, I've been working on my muscles a bit, but it's a shame. Things are moving faster than expected." He glanced at the summoning circle. "The Glaskin conquest has begun. Someone will figure it out on their own. I don't need to pay too much attention to a place like that. It's filled with influential people because the future can't be changed, but time is money. I can't just sit around." Ed Rothstaler moved into the study. He took off his uniform jacket and placed it on the table. Alone, he lifted the heavy bookshelves, carrying them while thinking a little while, the lower-level spirits will scatter and pour out. So I need to block the entrance so they can't get in. While I'm at it, I'll take the time to rearrange this place to make it safer. Now, while eating some dried beef jerky he had brought with him, he would spend the whole night going over the materials. Then Ed suddenly remembered something and stopped. He recalled the reason Janica's skills were so remarkable. It's in her level of mastery and her ability to understand and sense spirits. Those two abilities increase through exposure to spirits. Just meeting and communicating with spirits is already a rare talent in itself. For me, someone who can't even see spirits raising those stats like she has is almost impossible. Ed Rothstaler opened the door and stepped outside. A horde of monsters rushed at him, ready to attack. As they charged toward him, he thought, are those spirits appearing because Janica summoned them? This sweet event, I'm definitely going to enjoy it. Using his magic, he charged forward and attacked the monsters. His speed was insane. In the end, he triumphed and defeated all of them. Sitting against the wall, he saw his system display his achievements. Fire Elemental Magic Ignition reached level 12. Spirit Detection Magic reached level 7. And Spirit Understanding Magic also reached level 7. He was surprised. I've reached level 12 and level 7, but I've heard that if they combine to more than level 15, I could form a contract with a spirit. Leaning his head back against the wall, he sighed and thought, it seems like I've reached the limit of what my body can handle. If I push myself any further, it could be really dangerous. At that moment, Zix happened to be carrying Elka and walked over asking, what are you sitting there for? Ed Rothstaler looked at him with curiosity, wondering why is he asking that? Does he seriously think I'm just resting here without noticing all my injuries? And why should I give him a long-winded answer? Ed Rothstaler replied briefly, I'm meditating. Hearing this, Zix could only sigh and mutter to himself, ha ha, even a 3-year-old wouldn't believe that answer. Zix responded, oh, I see. Now I feel like I understand you a little better. You've been like this from the start. Ed Rothstaler stared at Zix in surprise. Zix lowered his head and said, honestly, I owe you a lot, Senior Aide. He continued, I'll pay you back when I get the chance. Ed Rothstaler glanced at both of them. feeling like he had figured something out. Ah, Elka must be Zix's lover. She was mentioned in the guidebook right from the beginning. I completely forgot about that. Seems like Elka is pretty important to Zix. Zix looked up at Ed Rossdaler with an unfriendly expression. Ed Rossdaler continued, looking at the situation. It seems like you've left the student lounge and ended up here. He turned to Zix and reminded him, once you're sure Elka is safe, get back to work. Head back to the student lounge. You're not supposed to be here. Ed Rossdaler added, go help Taylor. If you follow what he says, things will somehow work out. Zix asked, Taylor, you mean Taylor McClure? Ed Rossdaler replied, yes, that guy always manages to avoid failure by the skin of his teeth. Zix skeptically said, I don't understand why Taylor is so highly rated. I've never even talked to that guy. Ed Rossdaler responded, the thing is, the outer shell of the high-level Tarkan demon spirit can only be damaged by his element slash attack. Taylor's skill, learned in Act 1, Scene 9, element slashed, is critical for this fight. The success of this battle depends on that skill. If you can get Taylor to use it, your chances of winning are much higher. Zix replied, thanking him for the advice. Ed Rossdaler answered, no time to waste, so hurry up and go. I'll rest here for a bit. Seeing Zix and Elka walking away, Ed Rossdaler sighed and thought to himself, I've given so much advice, I really hope it works. It has to be this way. Taylor thought back to what Zix had said earlier about not knowing him, which made him curious. But why hadn't Zix become friends with him yet? Ed Rossdaler remembered what had happened during the first scene. Scene 9, the final evaluation of the first semester. In their duel, Taylor had been defeated, but he'd learned how to control elemental magic and disrupt Zix's spells. After seeing Taylor's determination, Zix recognized him, and they eventually became friends. However, the final scene of the first act had come a month earlier than in the original story. As a result, the two of them weren't friends yet. Taylor still hadn't mastered how to sever the elements. No one in the current combat team was capable of inflicting damage on Tarkan. It was hard to accept that the entire storyline had completely fallen apart. In the student square, where the assault force was stationed, Taylor lowered his head and said, I'm sorry I'm late. I know I'll have to pay for my mistakes. Phonia responded, all right, even with Zix, it seems like we're still going to be defeated. The attack team failed in the first round. Claire sat tiredly on a chair, his body covered in wounds. He forced himself to speak, if you plan to attack again, it's best to gather more volunteers. I'll join as soon as the pain in my leg goes away. Phonia spoke up, Claire, all right, Claire. Just rest for now. You can't move around normally at the moment. Claire replied, Princess Phonia, if you truly care about me, please withdraw your orders. Phonia gritted her teeth and said, Claire, I also have something called a human heart. Luckily, the retreat was successful, but Claire had completely drained his strength. Clevius, the president of the first-year combat club, was also injured. What exactly happened? Phonia, with a dark expression, said, first, use whatever strength you have left to destroy me. Claire interrupted and responded, I don't have the time to take down Tarkan, but there was complete silence. The atmosphere grew even heavier after Claire's words. He spoke tensely, looking at the state of the summoning ritual. It will be completed very soon. His words immediately made Phonia frown in anger. You! That's the situation I want to avoid the most, but there's nothing I can do about it. Suddenly, Ed Rossdaler appeared. He walked slowly toward the group. We'll split into two fighting teams, he said. His cold gaze and firm expression gave his words an undeniable authority. I'll lead one team and do things my way. From now on, I'll take charge of this battle. Ed calmly explained, we need to get past Tarkan's fire spirit, summoned by Janica, and deal with Janica, who is being controlled by the dark soul philosopher. The terrifying image of the monster flashed in everyone's minds for a moment, but since they had already faced Tarkan before, they knew what it was like. However, because of its form, we can't use our full strength to fight it. So we won't have to face Tarkan directly, Ed continued, outlining his strategy. One team will distract Tarkan, while the other moves into the combat training area to subdue Janica, who is under control. If we ignore Tarkan, we just need to handle Janica. Lortell Keklin responded, that's impossible. It's completely different from what we know about Tarkan's training in combat. The only reason we were able to retreat was pure luck. She explained her point. If the decoy team fails and Tarkan chases down the suppression team, or if the decoy team is completely wiped out, we'd have to deal with both problems at once. The risk would be too high. Ed Rossdaler turned to respond to Lortell Keklin. Risk assessment can only be made when there are other options available. At that point, the most important goal is to subdue Janica. Once that's done, Tarkan will be neutralized. Zix walked up from behind and asked Ed Rossdaler, the real question is, who's going to be on the decoy team? Alvara Anishan added, being part of that group is like volunteering for suicide. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the crowd, accompanied by a confident voice. "Oh, it's Taylor McClure." He raised his hand and said, "I volunteer for the decoy team." But Ed Rossdaler spoke up, refusing. "No, don't do that. Go inside. No matter what, you're still part of the fighting group." Ed Rossdaler pushed Taylor McClure away. As he walked, Taylor McClure turned his head back, trying to convince him. "I have quick feet. I don't know how long I can run. If I have to sacrifice myself, I'll do it. It's the right thing to do." Ed Rossdaler responded, "You're starting to understand something." He continued, "We don't choose sacrifices. We don't necessarily have to split it up like that." He said calmly, "Clebius and Lortell will handle that. The three of us, including me, will lure Tarkan." Clebius and Lortell were both shocked, protesting loudly, "Why me? I don't want to die." Lortell quickly refused. "I'll politely decline this one." Ed Rossdaler responded, "Trust me, there's a way to trap Tarkan." The more he spoke, the more determined Clebius and Lortell became their opposition. Clebius spoke first, dealing with Ed Rossdaler and Tarkan. "I'm as good as dead already." Lortell continued, "No, what do we do now?" Ed Rossdaler, feeling impatient, thought to himself, "We don't have much time." From a distance, Phonia's voice echoed back, and what she said made sense. She held her head in her hands and continued, "I still don't know the purpose, but Phonia said, I am leading everyone in the name of Fionia Elias Kloll, the third princess of the Kloll Empire. Divide the team into two groups with different tasks." She stood up to take charge, giving orders. "I, Taylor, Zix, and Alvaro will handle Janica. Clebius, Lortell, and Ed Rossdaler, you're with me." Before her words were even finished, the faces of the two looked full of helplessness and resignation. "We'll be the bait for Tarkan." She quickly added, finally, and most importantly, "Don't die. I'll keep it brief since time's running out, but that's the main thing." Her instructions were clear and failure was not an option. As soon as she finished speaking, the two teams split and quickly moved in separate directions to begin their missions. Ed Rossdaler's team was already moving down the hallway. Lortell turned to him and asked, "How do we stall the fire lizard?" Ed Rossdaler replied, "We stick to the plan." Then the three of them charged forward, heading straight toward the dragon. "We'll win no matter what." Ed Rossdaler turned to reassure Clebius. "Don't worry, Clebius." Clebius was nervous and didn't feel confident in his abilities. As a first-year student at the Combat Academy, the pressure was overwhelming. Ed Rossdaler continued, "We'll make it, trust me." Clebius looked at Ed Rossdaler with a confused expression. How is he so confident? Inside, Clebius felt a mix of emotions. Was there really a way to win this? Due to the loud noise, the dragon named Tarkan seemed to have woken up. It stood up and stared at them. In the training room behind the door, Janica failover only needed to distract the dragon, Tarkan. Clebius glanced toward Princess Phonia. The princess's strong and determined appearance made him admire her, which was why he had followed her here. Clebius smiled to himself, thinking, "But I'm not alone." Feeling re-energized, he picked up speed as he ran toward Tarkan. Maybe I can find a courage after all. As soon as Tarkan arrived, he reacted immediately. He was about to unleash magic from his massive mouth. Clebius stood frozen in place right in front of the dragon. In a panic, he turned to look at his companion and shouted, "Oh no, it's coming! The fight's starting! How are we going to lure it now?" But when he turned around to check, Ed Rossdaler and Lortell had disappeared without a trace. Clebius stood still, drenched in sweat, completely unsure of what to do next. Tarkan closed in from behind, glaring at him, clearly waiting to see what Clebius would do next. In a flash, Clebius turned and began running away from the dragon, his screams echoing through the air, even though the distance between him and the monster wasn't that far. "You lied to me! You tricked me! Why are you doing this to me?" Clebius kept shouting, his voice carrying all the way to Lortell. "Hey, where are those crazy idiots? Come out here! This is so messed up, I hate this whole world." Lortell, not too far away, closed her eyes, recalling the words Ed Rossdaler had just told her earlier when Clebius had been excitedly running toward Tarkan. "Let's get outside before we push Clebius into the hallway to lure that creature." Lortell smiled and sighed, replying to Ed Rossdaler, "You mean you'll end up sacrificing Clebius? It might not be so bad if it saves more people, but you can't escape the moral dilemma there." Ed Rossdaler responded, "No, it's not about sacrifice." He glanced at Clebius and added, "Just looking at him, you can tell he has the presence of a leader." To dodge Tarkan's attack, Clebius was incredibly quick. His physical strength and agility are impressive. Her face barely changed, always keeping that cold, composed look. Besides, in this operation, the most important role will be yours, Lortell. Ed Rossdaler led Lortell to the wall outside the corridor, next to the combat training room. Lortell followed Ed's instructions and cast her spell on the wall in front of her. Ed Rossdaler continued to explain to Lortell, "Your job is to secure the entrance for the Janica suppression team. In reality, your role will be crucial in creating a safe passage for the team attacking Tarkan. Lortell laughed as he cast his spell, saying, "Wow, you really can't judge others just based on rumors." At that moment, Ed Rossdaler turned around and said with confidence, "Everyone's hesitating, unsure if they should go for it, but you're great at these kinds of things." Lortell struck the wall, sending chunks flying as they were blasted away effortlessly. The huge explosion shook the entire building and debris from the wall scattered everywhere. The wall was torn into pieces, with many sections now broken, and a cloud of dust filled the air. Lortell had successfully created a path for Phonia's assault team. Seeing this, Phonia's team was left stunned by the scene in front of them. Everyone stood frozen, almost like statues, unable to hide their surprise. "What's going on?" Lortell turned around and smiled, saying, "Let's go, time to take control." Lortell thought back to the huge explosion earlier. Reflecting on their training together, he remembered how he had watched me use forbidden mid-level magic to blow apart a nail-tooth ceiling. She smiled with excitement. "So, you assigned me this role. You're quite an interesting guy, Ed Rossdaler." She watched Phonia's team leave, quietly thinking to herself, "Well, at least the path is secured." Lortell glanced back at the others, focusing on Clebius, who was being chased by Tarkan. Even though he was running for his life, Clebius still had enough energy to shout, "Lortell, Ed, did you really think I was dead? I won't let you off that easy." Lortell quickly used magic to help Clebius, while Ed Rossdaler stood by, frantically saying, "Even if the mission succeeds and the fighting force gets through safely without encountering Tarkan, Clebius and I still have to deal with him." At that moment, Lortell stepped out. Seeing Clebius in distress, running and leading Tarkan away, she thought to herself, "Fighting Tarkan in the student hall with no escape route? Dead? No way. He'll run." Meanwhile, Clebius was shouting in panic, "No, I'm sorry, help me. I'm sorry for saying I'd kill you. Please save me, just this once." Remembering what Ed Rossdaler had said earlier, Clebius screamed, "Run. Now that we have a moment, we can figure out how to deal with him." She thought about the menacing appearance of the creature. Its thick, armored shell made it impervious to attacks. "Didn't you see it during training? I lost to it once. Besides, no one on the team came out unscathed when facing that monster head-on." Ed Rossdaler pulled out a small pouch and said, "This is what we need. Focus your magic and get ready." Lortell, a little confused, asked, "What is that?" Ed Rossdaler hurried up the stairs carrying the pouch. As he ran, he couldn't help but worry. Lortell's right. Without elemental cutting magic, there's no one on the team who can break through Tarkan's shell. Meanwhile, Lortell was still helping Phonia's team. She used her ice magic to support them. Just as the dragon broke through the ice wall she had created, Ed Rossdaler burst through the door, out of breath. The solution was clear: overwhelming firepower. In front of him, Lucy Merrill was peacefully asleep. Almost no one had completed the extra task. I've tried countless times. Ed Rossdaler was carrying Lucy Merrill on his back as she mumbled in her sleep. "Huh, what? Oh, I'm shaking. I'm asleep." Ed Rossdaler's face darkened with anger. He was furious, thinking, how can she fall asleep at a time like this? And it's not even daytime. It's nighttime. Lucy, having nowhere to sleep since her hiding spot had been destroyed, made her way to the rooftop and dozed off for a bit. Janica was in a bad mood, which made Belmaya sensitive to it. So Lucy ran away, using all of her magical strength to escape and eventually passed out from exhaustion. This could have been a twist in the scenario to remove this unstable human from a dangerous situation where her help had been needed right from the start. Lucy Merrill was surprised when she noticed the smell coming from the pouch. It smells like dried beef. Ed Rossdaler pulled out some delicious-smelling jerky from the pouch. But suddenly, while Lucy wasn't paying attention, he shoved the jerky into her mouth. Eat a lot. Come on, now's not the time to be picky." Ed Rossdaler ran toward the balcony with her. He jumped, using one hand to grab the railing and the other to hold on to Lucy, whose mouth was stuffed with jerky, leaving her no chance to protest. Their enemy was a fire lizard, and they needed to throw her toward it at a distance to make sure she landed where the creature could reach. He gritted his teeth, putting everything he had into the gamble, but there was nothing to worry about. He had done this many times before. He quickly threw Lucy aside with incredible force, sending her flying in a blur. Lucy was left stunned, unable to process what was happening. At the same time, he yelled out, "Everyone, get down." At that moment, Tarkan was about to unleash a fire attack on Team Phonia. Lucy flew toward them, crying out, "Oh my god, this is awful. This is horrible." The fiery blast from Tarkan was about to hit them, but Lucy managed to reach them just in time, shielding everyone. The advanced lightning spell, Heavenly Punishment, released a blinding, searing flash of light. The fire struck Lortell and Clebius, but thankfully, thanks to the protective orb created by Lortell's magic, both of them were shielded. Due to the massive explosion, it was impossible for Ed Rossdaler to avoid being affected. He was on the railing, gripping the metal bars tightly to keep himself from being swept away. In some ways, this was the most crucial moment. Tarkan was a high-level fire spirit nearly impossible to defeat, even if everyone attacked it, its protective shield was too strong. But now, after Lucy used her advanced magic, even its tough shell had cracked. Now it would take damage from our attacks. Ed Rossdaler dropped down from the railing at breakneck speed. Of course, when I kill it, I'll earn a massive amount of experience points. At this point, I also need to think about what I really need. The final blow that finishes off that monster has to be mine. He charged toward Tarkan, his body radiating with determination, ready to defeat him. Next, there was a touching scene where a mother and daughter shared a warm embrace. The mother softly said, "I'm so proud of you, my dear daughter Janica." But then came the cold, detached emotions. One person after another expressed goodwill, but it all felt insincere. "I'm really happy to be friends with you, Janica. You're the pride of the second-year students. You're the only one who demonstrated top-tier skills in this joint combat training course. If it's Janica, I can trust her. Without you, the second-year students would be the most clueless generation." A dark aura radiated from the figure of the girl, destroying every fragment of the fake memories. Her blood-soaked feet stepped on the broken pieces of the past. Then an unknown voice echoed, "I'm so glad you're here, Janica." Suddenly, a massive explosion went off. The students quickly shifted into high alert. Janica watched them gather in one spot, secretly pleased. Everyone's here, she thought. Chains wrapped around her neck and arms, and purple veins appeared on her face. She forced a smile, telling herself, "I have to greet them with my usual smile." She said, "Welcome." A dark aura covered her body, and behind her, there was a horned monster with the face of a wolf, its eyes glowing red. At that moment, she was suspended in the air, striking an elegant pose with the monster, while the students below could only stare in awe. Then Ed, his clothes stained with fresh blood, quickly rushed past. He thought Nail Hall has the battle already started on Janica's side. This fight will end when dawn breaks. He paused and silently thought, "Thankfully, I'm almost done." Unfortunately, one of the students was attacked by a monster. Its mouth spewed fire dangerously close, while the student could only run for his life, shouting in panic, "Ah! Ah!" Ed appeared behind Lortell, though he didn't know exactly when, and asked, "Lucy, how is she?" Lortell responded coldly, "Go somewhere else." Ed didn't seem bothered by her attitude and continued, "If she can handle it, that's good." Lortell replied, "I don't think she has enough energy left to cast any spells." Ed looked a bit helpless and said, "All right, we'll have to deal with it ourselves." She agreed, "That's what I was thinking." Lortell was right. Lucy was curled up inside a protective ball, calmly falling asleep while the battle raged outside. Her peers were being relentlessly chased by monsters, but she remained unfazed. Then Lortell added, "But it's still resisting. Even after I hit it with 2 ice spears, how is it holding up so well?" Ed rolled up his sleeves, preparing for battle. "We need to decapitate it. Your ice magic isn't sharp enough, so leave it to me." Lortell was shocked when she heard this. "You're a mage like me, senior. Should this be something for a swordsman to handle? Someone like Clivius, for example. Speaking of Clivius, as a swordsman, he's terrified of the enemy. His hands and feet are shaking, and Ed can tell he's not going to get anything done. Do you really think he can handle this?" Lortell had to admit, yeah, he's definitely not up to it. He's just sitting there, scared out of his mind. Anne, however, spoke with determination. "I'll take responsibility for ending this, so please try to hold it off for me a little longer. I'm ready to risk everything for everyone. So you have to do your part, make sure it's done right." Lortell was stunned by Ed's words. She paused before responding. "You talk about things like responsibility and risking your life like it's so simple. It seems so casual, especially with the dragon breathing fire and people running for their lives, and yet you two are still standing around chatting. When I think about it, it's like you're betting your own life, isn't it?" She ignored the situation and kept trying to stop him, but Ed remained confident. "It's not a gamble. A life is worth more than that." He turned his head and glanced coldly at Lortell, speaking seriously. "This is an investment." It was like finding a teammate who shared the same goal. Lortell smiled and said, "An investment. That's right up my alley." As she spoke, she began to use magic. "Maybe I am a princess who holds everything in her hands, and because of my royal blood, I let myself be influenced by the flow of life. But because you, my senior, are willing to bet your life for me." Sharp blocks of ice began to appear around her. With the resolve to unleash her power, her voice rang out confidently. "Then I will also risk my life and gamble everything." He finished making his preparations and rushed forward. "I'm going." As he charged in, that was when Clivius was knocked out of the way by the monster, shouting in panic. He panted heavily, "I'm not sure if I'm going to make it." The monster opened its mouth, ready to strike. He muttered to himself, "I'm at my limit now, and so is this thing." Seeing a monster gathering a terrifying amount of power, he understood. Even so, I can understand why Clebius is so terrified. On both sides, it's one person and one beast pushing towards each other. The monster let out a horrifying roar. At such close range, its scream made its head spin. It was hard to stay focused. Even though the power isn't fully gathered yet, we need to get closer. Suddenly, a scream echoed, distracting him for a moment. A giant arm shot out from the magic circle and flew straight in front of Clebius, making him tremble where he sat. What's that? He thought. Ed glanced over and immediately recognized it. It was Glaskin's right arm. So that means Taylor and his team have pushed it to its final stage, right? This meant the story was unfolding just as expected, though not at the best time. Anyone would be distracted by something like this. The monster opened its massive mouth and shot a blast of power toward him. However, he realized the ice blocks Lortell had conjured earlier were working. They helped him block the attack. Luckily, when she cast her spell in time, she shouted out. At that moment, his thoughts continued. Even in the middle of such a disaster, Lortell made no mistakes. The creature struggled against the sudden cold attack, and just when it opened its mouth wide, he seized the opportunity. With the creature distracted, he closed in quickly and focused his strength, he told himself, and I'm doing the same. Then he strained to channel a sphere of energy in his hands, a spell he probably used thousands of times before. It was Windblade. A burst of incredible green light shot out, landing a devastating blow. The creature's head was instantly severed. It was clear. It was dead, no question about it. The huge head dropped heavily to the ground with a loud thud, echoing for a few moments. At that moment, a system notification appeared. You have defeated the high fire elemental, Tarkan. Then, a series of rewards followed. Increased connection range for spirit magic. Increased understanding of spirits. Unlocking a contract with a spirit. Spirit contract is now available. He didn't really pay attention to the system's messages. What grabbed his interest was something off in the distance. Oh, that's Taylor. Following his gaze, a figure shot out from beneath the tower, charging straight toward the massive metal structure, which looked like a glowing red hand reaching for the sky. In an instant, the figure vanished, and from within the pile of metal, a blinding light exploded. Before anyone could figure out what happened, a heavy mass of metal was effortlessly subdued, with several cracks appearing across its surface for reasons no one could understand. What was bound to happen happened. A huge explosion went off, and heavy metal debris rained down. Taylor was also strongly affected by the blast, losing consciousness and falling freely from the sky. He slipped into a coma, his hair turned white, and he hit the ground. Ed sighed, truly, what a strong main character. When the monster was finally defeated, the battle came to an end. Cracks like broken glass began to appear above. After a while, it shattered into a large piece, revealing a blinding light that drew the attention of the students below, who looked up in awe. It's over. After the battle, the sky cleared, and everyone took a moment to rest. Underneath an ancient tree, one of them said, I've heard so many people talk about risking their lives for something, but so many never follow through. They're all just a bunch of cowardly idiots. Hearing this, he simply responded with a quiet, Noticing his lack of reaction, Lortell turned to tease him. What's up, senior? We just went through a terrifying ordeal, almost died, and yet you're still so calm. She extended her hand, signaling a reintroduction. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Lortell Ketchum. Ed politely shook her hand in return. But suddenly he realized Lortell was offering him something. It was 3 gold coins lying in her palm, which left him confused. This time you win. She stuck her tongue out playfully. You let your guard down, right? Now you owe me a favor. So, what should we do now? Lortell smiled mischievously. We'll figure it out, senior. Hearing her, he understood a little of her intention. You want to stay in touch? Truth be told, he wasn't eager to get involved with her. But then he shifted his attention to Taylor, who had now woken up and was standing up irritably. Really annoying, you probably know why I'm upset. Ed silently observed and quietly assessed Taylor's appearance. It was clear he had mastered the elemental sword, looking just like he did in the game. Impressive. Taylor walked up to Ed and said, which left him a bit stunned. Then, unexpectedly, Taylor bowed respectfully before him. I owe you this time. Thank you. Clebius shouted at that moment. Taylor, you don't need to show respect to this type. One day it'll stab you in the back. It's because of him that I almost died. Before Taylor could speak up, Fodia, Zix, and Lortell shot him glares full of disdain. Shut up, Clebius, you're talking too much. Clebius, you're so noisy. He shrank back, bullied by the group, and sat there crying. No matter how much he whined, Fonia ignored him. She turned to Ed and said, Ed Rossdaler, you contributed a lot in the last fight. If I send a letter of recommendation to the student council, before she could finish, Ed interrupted. No. Ed struggled to get up from under the tree and said, Anyway, Lucy was the one who contributed the most to defeating Tarkan, and Taylor was the one who took down Bilofer and Glaskin. So please focus on them. Suddenly, Elvira popped her head out and grinned mischievously. That's right, don't change the subject. Sure, everyone knows Lucy and Taylor worked hard, but we're talking about something else here. Are you embarrassed or something? After hearing that, Zix felt the need to speak up and set things straight. He's a senior, you know. Speak respectfully, Elvira. Zix's words made her furious, her temper flaring up like a cat's fur standing on end. Why are you taking his side? She shot back. Zix repeated, speak properly. Watching them, Zix couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth in his heart. He thought to himself, to avoid affecting the original story, I kept my distance from the main characters. But now that I'm seeing them up close, I feel so moved. Seeing them fulfill their roles in this world, solving problems time and time again, it brings a strange sense of comfort. Taylor grew stronger through every challenge. Ayla became stronger too, all because of Taylor. Phonia gradually matured, accepting her fate as the ruler of the kingdom. Zix had found his own path, gaining wisdom and understanding of various civilizations. Clavius grew more confident in himself, and Elvira realized that joy and attention aren't everything in life. Lortell, on the other hand, began to wonder, can life really be controlled by gold coins? Each main character, with their different roles, reached the same conclusion, the trophy of victory. Understanding this truth, I've returned. Finally, he appeared at the site where the battle had just taken place, holding a weight testing stone. It seemed pretty ordinary, so he tossed it aside. Ed was in the middle of the debris in a place you couldn't find during an active game. After the story ended, at the reserved podium, there was a wooden cabinet, the same one Lucy had used to sleep in during the joint combat training sessions. He approached it and opened the door. No matter how many times he thought about it, he still didn't see it as a good option. However, the person had no other choice but this place. He knew that for the main characters to shine, someone had to stay behind the scenes. The door opened and Janica, covered in wounds, appeared before him, but she smiled. Ha ha! It seemed like she was happy because it was him. To explain this, let me rewind time to 2 days ago. On a clear morning that day, an incident broke out at the Elphalis Hall. The system screen flashed, detailing the combat abilities, trainee fighter type, specialized weapon, bow, proficiency level 6, key firepower level 3, emergency fire level 2, retreating missile level 1, targeting vision level 2, overall observation level 1. Ed looked at the footprints still imprinted on the ground. He could sense the prey was nearby, following these tracks. He held his bow and arrow, hiding behind a tree. Ed Rostaler really has no fighting skills at all, he thought. That's why I'm always forced to use the bow when I go hunting. The opportunity came. In front of him was a large deer carefully grazing. He quickly drew his bow, taking aim. But he felt powerless. The entire semester had passed and the vacation was already half over. Yet his skills with the bow were still completely hopeless. More importantly, he had recently noticed something strange in the hunting grounds. More and more people were showing up, like the high-ranking maid Belmaya. Zix was running toward him, working out. How should I put it? It felt like I was living in the northern forest. Every golden-haired figure would hide behind the grass, watching him shoot his bow. It seemed that word had spread to a lot of people. Among the regular visitors, a strong magical energy appeared in the sky. 3 people stood out in particular. Geste, a rare magical genius, was none other than Lucy, who would often drop by on a whim. Lucy approached the window and said, "Oh wow, there's a door here. Should we make another door at the back? Are you planning to build a chimney too?" He didn't answer her. Instead, he kicked Lucy out of the window. Lucy didn't mind at all. She kept offering her suggestions, not sure if they were needed. Can't you make a glass door? It won't break, right? We can't use magic here after all. Or maybe we should add another window on the roof? In his mind, he thought, this guest, she's always asking questions and suggesting things. She always wants you to follow her ideas. As for guest B, honestly, it's kind of nice to have her visit. She was Janica. Janica was in a great mood during the visit, excitedly carrying a basket of eggs. I brought the eggs. Belmaya said she wanted to give you these. She was the best student in the last 200 years and throughout the history of the elven sorcerers. Janica took the initiative to help with the laundry. If you wash them with hot water, add salt and stomp on them like this, they'll get super clean. Right? My parents used to do this with the dirty clothes on the farm. Even though she visited often, I didn't find it bothersome at all. Ed felt like she came by to chat with him almost every day, always cheerful and ready to help him with little tasks. He was incredibly grateful to her. He looked at her and without thinking, complimented her. Janica, you're amazing. How do you know everything? Hearing his words made Janica shyly turn away, leaving him staring, eyes wide and mouth open, completely confused. It was just a compliment. Janica replied, well, actually, she may seem easy to figure out. Then she turned back to face him with a slightly intimidating smile. Lucy comes by here a few times a week. Though honestly, sometimes I can't make sense of her. But still, she's the guest. The main reason I need to explain all of this to you guys. One late night, with a clear sky and a gentle breeze, though the person hadn't even shown up yet, her voice could already be heard. "Oh, Ed Rothstaler, it seems like you're really busy, aren't you?" 2 feet step over arrows stuck in the ground. The guest, C, has arrived. The owner of the voice earlier was Lortell. "I've been waiting for you." Behind her was a woman with white hair, someone known to the world as the Golden Woman. Lortell smiled and said, "I need your help." Lortell is the hidden villain of Act 2. He turned around with an unwelcoming expression. It's likely that she's trying to gather useful people to take control of the Ophelis Hall. But this time, I don't want to get involved. I'll simply refuse all her sweet-talking offers. Ed was about to leave, but was stopped by Lortell's words. "Haha, you see, at first, I wasn't planning on asking for your help." He thought to himself that as long as he didn't intervene, everything would follow the original plot. But then she said, if only Toad hadn't passed out. At this, Ed's eyes widened. Why did it go off track? He quickly turned back, stunned, and shouted at Loam, making her freeze in surprise. Why did he faint? Tell me now. That's right. According to the original story, Toad had fought with Taylor. But that day, Toad stood in the middle of the hall, surrounded by a crowd of people who were mocking him. Ha! This is ridiculous. This useless guy actually beat Glaskin. Everyone here saw you get knocked out by Lucy with just one punch. They sneered. Taylor had intended to just hit him lightly, but after that, this guy started spitting out insulting words. He angrily yelled, "You're even dumber than that worm, Ed Rothstaler." And just like that, his mouth got him into trouble. He got punched right in the face and collapsed, unconscious on the floor. Lortell said she wasn't sure whether it was because of Taylor or something else, but Elvira mentioned that this was the first time she had ever seen Zix this angry. She added, "Ha, that's why I can never trust sentimental people. What I asked him for wasn't even that difficult." Taking Alice's key, he walked into the Ophelis Hall. When the Weaver students arrived, all he had to do was open the door. He made one thing clear. "I'm sure there are plenty of others who are capable, just like me." Lortell agreed, true, but no matter how much they're paid, there's no guarantee they won't report you to the Academy. Lortell explained, "If they say that I'm the one behind all of this, what would happen to me? I can't trust anyone. That's why she came to me, because I'm not trusted at the Academy." She smiled slyly and repeated, "Ed, you were kicked out of the Ophelis Hall, right? Don't you want to make the Academy pay for that?" He answered honestly, "I really don't want to do that." This surprised Lortell a bit, but even though he said that, Ed still went on. "But would you agree to my terms? I just need to do a little bit of work." Hearing a request, Lortell grinned mischievously. 20 gold coins before this situation gets out of hand. Ed nodded. "Agreed. I'll make sure everything goes back to how it was." It was pouring rain, and the incident broke out at Ophelis Hall D1. The takeover of Ophelis Hall started just before the fight over the Sacred Teacher's secret book began. Ed sat under the eaves, flipping through the pages of a book. Lortell had orchestrated a scheme that brought the Academy's finances to the brink of disaster. It felt like a scene bridging 2 different events. According to the plan, Lortell's plot was incredibly successful and created a shining opportunity. A group of students worked for the Academy's profit, building a new world directly challenging the Student Council of Princess Fidonia. The ideal Student Council and the real stars. The important thing here is who Taylor will choose, and whichever side that is will win in the end. All I need to do is play my role as the audience and then follow the team that looks most likely to come out on top. He sat next to the fire, reading a book. I need to exist too. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Oh no, I need to go back to the dorm." As she spoke, she wrung out her clothes, silently hoping, "I bet the rain will stop soon." Janica sat down on the wooden bench beside him, warming herself. She quietly shared, "Ed, you're really hardworking. If I feel like it, I'll come and go just for the experience like I've been camping. But Hugh, you have to stay here." With the heavy rain pouring down and the sky overcast, he responded calmly, "Everything will get better." The rain continued to fall in sheets, the atmosphere heavy and damp. The 2 of them carry on their conversation. Janica suddenly remembered, "Speaking of which, it's time for me to move out of Ophelis Hall." Ed replied, Probably. The vacation is almost over anyway." Janica sighed, "I still have to throw away a ton of stuff because this place is more cramped than I thought." She clasped her hands in front of her chest and cheerfully said, "And if you need anything, just let me know, Ed. You're probably missing a lot of things here, right?" Ed was a bit surprised. "Huh? Oh, yeah." Janica continued, "I want to help you out a bit. I have extra pillows, blankets, clocks, and even lanterns." Ed thoughtfully watched her ramble on. "Also, I have a lot of other everyday things." He smiled, touched by Janica's kindness. It'd be a waste to just throw them all away, right? Don't you think? Even though I can't take the furniture with me since it all belongs to the Alphaless Hall. Ed looked interested. That sounds good. Janica stretched happily. Great, I'll leave once the new semester starts, so I'll bring those things over after that. At that moment, Janica turned her attention to Lucy, who was up on the roof. What about Lucy? Does she do that often? He answered gently sometimes. Watching Lucy standing alone in the rain, it's easy to understand what she's feeling. Her extraordinary powers don't come without a price. She's been avoiding life, using laziness as an excuse. For years, she's been trying to run away from the fate that was set for her. Lucy stands by herself on the rooftop, staring off into the distance. Rain like this always makes her feel down, and she ends up reflecting on the ups and downs of her life. Ed says, Lucy, this always happens when it rains. Just warm your hands up and don't worry about it too much. Honestly, I don't think about it that much either. Hearing that, Janica seems happy. Got it. So, you're just acting normal around Lucy, right? Ed adds, oh, and Janica, I just realized she's still in the Alphaless lobby. When the lobby gets taken over, the ancient defense spell activates on a large scale, trapping the students in their rooms, but Janica can easily get out of there. Still, Ed doesn't seem entirely reassured. I need to ask you for a favor. Janica responds, sure, what's up? Ed said seriously, tomorrow around 9 p.m., his eyes shifted to Janica beside him as he suggested, could you meet me at the Rose Garden in front of the Alphaless Hall? Janica was taken aback. Huh? She quickly covered her mouth with both hands, her face turning bright red. The Rose Garden. Ed didn't notice the surprised and embarrassed expression on Janica's face. He continued calmly, I'll explain everything tomorrow. Ed knew this was hard to explain. Right now, I don't even know how to say it. I should get her out of here. Make sure nothing bad happens. Find somewhere nearby where we can take cover from the rain. Janica stood up quickly, stammering, it's fine. Then, with a blush in her cheeks, she ran off into the rain, her mood clearly lighter. I'll go now. Goodbye. He sighed as he watched Janica leave. When the new semester begins, the rain will stop too. On that day, I'll enjoy the clear sky and the sunshine after such a long period of gloom. The rain still poured as if a few drops were left to fall. After that, even the forests around here will give off the distinct scent of autumn. Ed sat alone by the fire, lost in thought. The long break is finally coming to an end.